The digital ID provides government the ability to track, analyze, predict, and control a person's private activities. It is the antithesis of individual freedom and will not require an implantable chip, as many have feared for decades. Evidence clearly shows that biometrics, such as fingerprints and facial scans, will do the job much more efficiently. And the aftermath of the COVID lockdown shows us how it will be deployed. During the COVID era, government said that masks were recommended, while private companies said, no mask, no entry. And the public overwhelmingly complied, but not with an overreaching government. They complied with the grocery store to buy food, the airlines to travel, and their own banks to access money. Looking back, it is quite clear the COVID lockdowns provided an opportunity to beta test digital ID compliance through private company mandates and helped normalize the use of QR scans and facial pics for entry into private businesses. And it proved to be a success. Now we are seeing the same techniques being used with the rollout of the digital ID. The gold standard for biometric regulation was written in 2008 as the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act and is being replicated all over the United States. It mandates that private entities obtain written consent before collecting biometrics, disclose their policies, and destroy data after a set period. And most importantly, it exempts government entities entirely, allowing state and federal government to collect and utilize biometric data while passing the liability to private corporations. These laws have been met with over 1,000 class action lawsuits since 2015, which resulted in the standardization of consent prompts in apps and services, such as Affirm's biometric consent, which now states, by clicking accept or proceeding, you consent to collection of biometric data. Click a button and you're in the new system. If government were to mandate the digital ID, it would predictably ignite mass protest. We can see this happening today in the UK. The United States will avoid this by utilizing the private sector in what appears to be voluntary action. The FBI's Clearview AI has harvested over 30 billion faces from social media. And because Clearview is technically a private company, the FBI has access to all this without the need for asking. In over 43 states, the Department of Motor Vehicles have sold driver's license photos to private firms who resold to local police for facial recognition. The government doesn't need to mandate biometric ID, which would most likely be considered a violation of American rights. And so it outsources the mandate to private companies who are legally required to get consent, while the government is free to collect and utilize this data under legal immunity. Just like the COVID era, you will be free to give consent, but if you choose not to, you will have to leave the reservation and find a way to fend for yourself. Greg Reese reporting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Diamond Report Live. I'm glad you guys are here tonight. It is 9:04 p.m. Central Time, and it is November 16th, 2025. And we are here yet again. Going to do another Sunday night live broadcast. And let's see where the world is headed. Well, I think we know where the world is headed, don't we? Well, anyway, let's take a look at the news together. I figured we'd go through the headlines that I've pulled up, and then whatever comes up in chat, we'll take a look at that as well. Anyway, hello and welcome. Glad you guys are here again, like I said, and I wanted to just give you a quick little technical update. I've got two live streams running on two different channels, and you might notice, or you may have already noticed, that there are two different layouts on each of the channels. Hopefully that's not too confusing for people. What I did was the platform that I'm using is now offering a new layout that's optimized specifically for smartphone users. So I thought we would try that this week and just see if it's too confusing for people or what. I've noticed that the chat, for whatever reason, if you're on the smartphone layout, does not show up directly on the screen. So that must be a bug on the platform that I'm using. However, I'm sure they will get that remedied at some point. So note that if you're on the smartphone layout on YouTube, that if you're typing in chat, you're not going to see it necessarily on the main screen here with all the other folks. So just be aware of that. That is a bug in the system, nothing that I'm doing. So anyway, hello and welcome. I'm glad that you guys are here and can hopefully tune into one of the various different platforms. We're on Rumble like usual, and we're on both YouTube channels, Take It to the Lord in Prayer, and also the Diamond Disc channel on YouTube. So let's see what we've got going on here. We've got the Hal Turner radio show site pulled up. I thought I would just mention this. This is not a direct affecting Americans type of thing, but I do think it's interesting. It says Mexico descending into revolution, presidential palace surrounded, protective wall breached. That was as of yesterday at some point. As this story is posted last night, November 15th, Mexico is collapsing into political revolution and the forcible overthrow of its president. Not sure if you guys have heard about this or not. Thousands are attacking the presidential palace in Mexico City. And then he says on November 12th, he was reporting on his radio show that a metal wall was being urgently erected around the presidential palace. Tonight, that wall had been ripped apart by Mexican citizens protesting what they call the cartel president, quote unquote. Videos all over social media showing the ferocious rioting and ferocious police response to what's taking place. The crowd gathered most of this morning, meaning yesterday. By about 3 p.m. Eastern U.S. time, it started getting ugly. And then there's some video clips here that are posted from X that he's embedded here on this article. However, obviously you can find these clips all over X if you happen to be on there. It says the current president, Claudia Sheinbaum, came to power in June 2024 after 37 other candidates were killed. Yeah, that's what happens in Mexico. The crowd around the presidential palace breached the new metal wall and headed directly toward the palace. Mexico City informal organizers set the Angel of Independence monument as the starting point for a march to the Zocalo, the capital's central square. Posts on X associated with the movement have called for participation mainly in protest over insecurity following the killing of Urupan Mayor Carlos Manzo. Mexico's government, however, says the march is not spontaneous. Officials claim it's being driven by political operatives and supported by alleged external funding. The CIA, do you suppose? Surely not. Anyway, there's quite a few video clips embedded here in this article. If you guys want to have a look at that, that is on Hal's website, halturnerradioshow.com. And one more from this site. I just thought I would mention this. This is something that came up a couple of days ago now here on his radio show, and I just thought it was interesting because this is what it's come to in Ukraine. Ukrainians are told to burn chicken manure to heat homes as electric and heat will be out for the winter. Russia will be continuing the war. Rubio says nothing left to sanction. That's true, and that didn't work. Russia has done what they needed to do. Ukrainian situation is falling apart rather quickly, and for the first time, Secretary Rubio, confirms that Russia is demanding the surrender of the Donbass to end the conflict. We can only judge by what we see. They've clearly stated that they want all of the Donetsk, and of course the Ukrainians won't agree to that. So yes, that's the conclusion we have to draw, Rubio said. And then in the video clip below, it says there's not a lot left to sanction. I don't know more what we can do. I mean, we're running out of things to sanction. So yes, they are definitely doing that. Earlier this week, Russian President Putin explicitly delineated Russian conditions for a broad, sustainable, permanent peace accord. No temporary ceasefires, no European peacekeepers, no NATO or Nazis in Ukraine, and recognition of Crimea and Luhansk and Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson as permanent Russian territory. So, which, by the way, some of those territories have already voted to be part of Russia. So they want to be. So anyway, very interesting things unfolding there. Yes, they're literally saying to burn chicken shiite to stay warm in the winter. How would you like it if your government told you that? Lovely, huh? Just goes to show you what things are like over in the old Ukraine. This was a big story this week, and we'll look at a little bit of this later, but Tucker Carlson's expose on Thomas Crooks, and then immediately, pretty much, FBI Director Patel says that the Trump rally shooter, Thomas Crooks, acted alone, which is what he'd been saying since that interview he did with Dan Bongino a few months ago. The same day that Tucker Carlson told America that more than the FBI has about Donald Trump's alleged and attempted assassination, Thomas Crooks, FBI Director Kash Patel, announced that Crooks had acted alone in planning and conducting the attack. Over 480 FBI employees were involved in the Thomas Crooks investigation. Employees conducted over 1,000 interviews, addressed over 2,000 public tips, and analyzed data extracted from 13 seized digital devices, reviewing nearly 500,000 digital files, collected, processed, and synchronized hundreds of hours of video footage, analyzed financial activity from 10 different accounts, and examined data associated with 25 social media and online forum accounts. The FBI's investigation into Thomas Crooks identified and examined over 20 online accounts, data extracted from over a dozen electronic devices, an examination of financial accounts, and over 1,000 interviews and 2,000 public tips. While Patel was seemingly responding to Tucker's claim that the government originally said Crooks had virtually no online footprint, that's not the point. If all of what Patel said is true, why don't we know any of it? Why did it take an anonymous tip to Tucker Carlson to provide the public with Crooks's public shift from a Trump supporter to Trump hater to failed assassin? The public has an interest in this and a right to know. So anyway, there's further information here, including the Who is Thomas Crooks full 34-minute mini documentary embedded here. I did watch that earlier today and thought it was pretty interesting and learned some things that I did not know, of course, because it had not been released. So yes, it's, I would say, pretty easy to say at this point that it was definitely a cover-up, and there's really no question about it. He had quite an online presence in many different social media platforms, and of course they were all scrubbed. So, not too surprising there. That's what the FBI does. Anyway, I just wanted to bring your attention to that. And yeah, and if you haven't seen the little mini doc here by Tucker and crew, it's certainly worth checking out. And we'll link to that in the Substack post. If you're not already signed up, you can do that using the QR code in the upper left-hand corner up there. But you can go to diamonddisc.substack.com as well and sign up for free, and you'll get all the links of the articles and things that I talk about tonight, if you're interested. All right, so that was a Zero Hedge article, and then we've got a few from needtoknow.news. Dems dump new Epstein files featuring Trump journalist Michael Wolff encouraged Epstein to blackmail Trump. How about that? The House Democrats Oversight Committee has released emails involving Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, including an email from Epstein himself, which says the President Trump has spent, quote, hours with a sex trafficking victim, and the Trump, quote, knew about the girls. This comes as House Democrats have threatened to release all documents relating to the Epstein case, which I think that's the whole point. That's what people want to see. The latest claim that Trump visited with one of Epstein's victims for several hours was debunked by the testimony of the victim herself, Virginia Giuffre, who, by the way, is no longer with us. James Lee broke a story that shows Epstein was tied to Israeli military intelligence agency, the Mossad, and that he plotted with journalist Michael Wolff to try to blackmail Trump during the 2016 presidential campaign. Epstein filmed everything, and the FBI took possession of the video evidence. This was never discussed, especially by the mainstream media. So have whatever opinion you want on Trump's involvement in all of this stuff, but the new supposed release here was a whole lot of nothing. It was basically a repackaging of what people already knew, and the victim that they're talking about was already public information. That is, of course, his relationship with Virginia Giuffre, and she, of course, went on the record multiple times saying Trump never touched her, and she never saw and witnessed him ever touching any other women. So who knows? I don't know what's true on that, but I'm just saying that the Democrats' attempt here has failed yet again. So anyway, need to know news articles that we have. Here's the second one. Texas ID will be linked to every Google search. New law requires age verification. Starting in January 2026, Texans, thought that was a red state. Not so much, maybe more purple. Texans will have to verify their identity or age just to access basic internet services under a new law, SB 2420, echoing Australia's rule that now links ID to every Google search. Age verification is a gateway to total surveillance state with a mandatory digital ID. Texas has joined a multi-state crusade to enforce digital identification in America, marketed as ways to, quote, protect children. That's always their little thing they hide behind. The other states include Louisiana, Kentucky, and Florida, with Oklahoma conducting a related investigation. Parents are being eradicated, and their responsibilities are being relinquished to the government and to internet companies. Attorney General Ken Paxton's lawsuit accuses Roblox, the video game, of letting predators exploit children while misleading parents about safety. But Paxton's solution is not to focus on Roblox to repair the problem, but to implement a system to track and monitor people, punishing the innocent. So see, we've run into this many times before. It's called, things like the Patriot Act, where it's an overcorrection, which of course we know was a plan all along and was written well in advance of 9/11. However, this seems like they are definitely overstepping their bounds, trying to, quote, protect the kids, but of course it's going to punish the innocent. That's exactly what's going to happen. So we'll see if that actually goes through, but, obviously it's very possible if it has support in the Texas legislature. So that is not good. Something to keep an eye on, especially for you Texans out there. Secret government experiment to simulate a chemical attack in St. Louis exposed. U.S. Army now admits they sprayed a chemical that contained cadmium, a known carcinogen, on a St. Louis neighborhood to simulate a biological attack. Yes, we're not joking here. This was a while ago. There was no warning and no consent. A neighborhood of more than 10,000 people were sprayed in the 1950s and 1960s. Residents say that the chemicals were sprayed from nozzles on the back of flatbed trucks and from the tops of buildings. Authorities claim that people doing the spraying were maintenance workers. More than 30 tests were conducted across the U.S. and Canada using zinc cadmium sulfide. So this is information that I've known about for a while. And yeah, it was a long time ago, but the point is they will do all sorts of biological attack type of experiments on the population and not bother telling us about that, and in fact have been doing that for decades. It's called geoengineering. So I first learned about this whole thing in St. Louis happening because of an article that we had on geoengineeringwatch.org. So yes, of course, the government conducts secret experiments, biological attacks on their own citizens. They always have done. So it goes back many decades. And then this one, Nancy Pelosi to retire. Her net worth has surged, get this, 2,297% since first taking office 38 years ago. She's just that smart of an investor, that's all. Democrat Representative Nancy Pelosi, 85, recently announced that she will not seek re-election and will finally hang it up. After decades in Congress, her wealth has grown a staggering 2,297% during her 38 years in Congress, mostly thanks to unbelievable stock trades. Quiver Quantitative analyzed her net worth and put it in the range of $278,760,000. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good chunk of wealth for somebody who is on a just a pittance from the federal government each year. She's just that smart of an investor, I guess. Pelosi's back in the news regarding her role in January 6th as the Blaze has named a Capitol Police officer as a 94% match for the person who planted the pipe bombs, which we mentioned all of that last week. If you missed the show, we won't go back into that again, but yeah, how about that? Do you have a 2,297% increase in your earning wages? If you've worked 38 years, probably not. That's my guess. called insider trading. All right. Technocracy.news. Got top headlines here. Who really owns America? The banks, the billionaires, and the deep state. The concept of ownership is being redefined as renting for life. World Economic Forum let the cat out of the bag when it proclaimed that by 2030 you will own nothing. You is a condescending term. It's a condescending term that refers to everyone else but them. Yes. Somebody has to own the stuff that we will rent, but it won't be you. As real assets are being hoovered up around the world, middle-class ownership is being squeezed out like a tube of toothpaste. We are close to the point of inflection to roll over into an asset-based economy devoid of debt and private property. Yes, it's called the Great Reset. I think we are on the verge of it pretty soon. Or else it's a slow creep. Possibly. I don't know. Police state ICE is building a social media panopticon. So once again, taking a good idea and expanding it so that it punishes everyone. Just like the TSA manhandles all travelers to potentially catch a few terrorists, which, by the way, I have talked to some of the TSA people before. I always opt to do I haven't flown very much recently, but recently when I did would have been back in January. I talked to the TSA agents, and because they pull you aside when you don't want to walk through the cancer scanning, where you can get cancer. And I specifically always asked the person who did the pat down if they've ever caught anyone, and there was never an affirmative that they had ever caught anyone trying to do anything. So there you go. Says, so ICE is trolling all citizens in order to find a few deportees. This is wrong on so many levels and is an egregious assault on the First and Fourth Amendments, but nobody seems to care, especially in the government, since ICE works for and reports to the federal government. It feeds all data collected back to those agencies. Layered on top of fusion centers, which the DHS also runs, ICE is adding boots on the ground to the burgeoning police state. So, I can see where there's some positives in what ICE is doing. Obviously, we want to get rid of the illegals. That's first and foremost. But punishing actual American citizens is not a good thing. I think most people would draw the line there. And then this is the other article on technocracy.news. ICE agents use new tech to identify and track people. So this is where we get into the punishment of the innocent. ICE agents are now able to surveil any American citizen without their knowledge or consent. The 9/11 crisis brought us the Patriot Act and the TSA, a privacy-sapping agency of Homeland Security created by a Republican administration. Yes, a rhino Republican administration. The immigration crisis has brought us ICE, another privacy-sapping agency of Homeland Security, which is morphing into a federal police force that supersedes local police. Waging war against illegals will never end, and hence, ICE has no exit plan to leave our streets ever. So I would say that the only part of this that they don't really mention is that how understaffed they are, and how, while what they're describing is very possible, right now the numbers are so small as far as the ICE agents to the actual illegals that I personally am not worried about this, although I could see where it could go bad really quickly if you have a situation where, if Trump's not in there or whoever, it can definitely be abused. So obviously we can watch and see what happens here, but they got to get rid of the illegals somehow, and obviously, that's a good supporting argument there for ICE as far as what they're doing. But yes, using new tech to identify and track everybody is not a good plan. So anyway, we will have to keep a sharp eye on that one. Here's a LifeZette article. Trump administration announces move to overhaul SNAP program after massive fraud revealed. This is something that we've talked about the last couple of weeks. And I think this was something that I remember mentioning, and I have heard other people mention it as well. And that is to just basically do a reset on it. And that's what it sounds like they're going to try and do. Let's see. Trump administration plans to require every SNAP recipient to reapply for benefits following findings of widespread irregularities, I would put that in quotes, in enrollment records across multiple states. Agriculture Secretary Rollins outlined the changes in an interview with Newsmax, citing data that had identified deceased individuals. Sounds like some of the stuff Doge found. Deceased individuals and duplicate recipients receiving benefits in the program. He has on lots of illegals. According to Rollins, an initial review last week found 500,000 duplicate cases and 5,000 deceased individuals listed as beneficiaries across 29 states. Updated figures provided this week shows 186,000 deceased people still listed in SNAP records. So 186,000 dead people were receiving SNAP benefits. The money was going somewhere. Family and friends, I guess. Rollins said those findings reflect only the states that complied with the federal data requests, noting that several large states were not even included in the review. I think there was a couple of states, a couple of the blue states, sued for even asking the question. Rollins told Newsmax 186,000 deceased men and women and children in this country are receiving a check. Now, that is what we're really going to start clamping down on. And here's the really stunning thing. That's just data from 29, which are mostly red states. She said the administration intends to rebuild SNAP's enrollment process to ensure that all recipients verify eligibility. It's going to give us a platform and a trajectory to fundamentally rebuild this program, have everyone reapply for the benefit, make sure that everyone is taking a taxpayer-funded benefit through SNAP or food stamps, that they literally are vulnerable and they can't survive without it. Yeah, a lot of people that are on it, illegals or not, just refuse to work. I've seen videos of people saying that they're allergic to work, and that's why they're on it, and they're getting thousands of dollars every month. That is the kind of stuff that needs to be stopped. Rollins added that Trump directed the department to prioritize the review. The president has made this a priority. We will fix the program, she said. So, this is me holding my breath. Yes. Federal authorities have made more than 120 arrests related to SNAP fraud since the review began. So it sounds like they're trying to do something. So I guess that's good. But anyway, SNAP fraud. Yes, there is quite a bit of additional information on this site. And then it's called LifeZet. I think it's part of the Revolver.news website family. That's where I found the link for that. But anyway, yeah, hopefully they're going to actually do something. They should just shut the whole thing down and start over. Okay, this one is a Substack post, but something worth mentioning because I don't know how much this is being reported in the U.S. Danish cows sickened by mandated methane inhibitor. Yes, that is a Bill Gates program, by the way. Mastitis and death reported from synthetic feed additive ordered by the government. So this is the Danish cows, but obviously they have this planned for cows all over the world because of the, quote, methane problem, which, of course, is a joke. Why don't they stop the geoengineering and leave the cows alone? That's what I say. Americans may chuckle when they remember AOC in her call to eradicate cow flatulence as part of her utopian Green New Deal, but the globalists weren't kidding. Mandates for the chemical feed additive Bovaer, Bovaer, took effect on October 1st in Denmark. Farmers there face fines if they do not add Bovaer to their cow feed, but many are reporting declining milk production, mastitis, which is bacterial infection, and even the need to euthanize cows downed by the chemical cure, quote-unquote, cure for climate change, a bovine dystopia. So they started, this is my opinion, but they started in Denmark because it is possibly the world's leading producer of milk. I mean, if not the number one, it's certainly very high up in the list. And getting them to have to euthanize their cows, just like ostriches being euthanized in Canada, is something that the globalists would want, isn't it? So yes, a bovine dystopia, and, quote, safe and effective, and how cows are the victims. So further information about Bovaer, I guess that's how you say it, Bovaer, Bovaer or Bovaer. So again, probably coming to a farm near you at some point, although at this moment tends to be in Europe. But yes, it's making cows very, very sick. And I wonder why. It's not like it was thought up by Bill Gates and company. Yeah. All right. So this is the Revolver article about this deal with Thomas Crooks. Tucker says Biden and Trump's FBI don't want you to know about Thomas Crooks. And why is that? Yes, well, it's because they have a pretty good cover-up going on right now. They don't want you to spoil it. I think Tucker may have just spoiled it for them. Something about the Thomas Crooks story has never added up, and Tucker just dropped a bomb. According to Tucker, both the Biden administration and the Trump's FBI don't want you knowing about anything about the man who tried to assassinate Trump in Butler, PA. So, further information here. I'm trying to see if there was anything new versus the article we mentioned earlier. Doesn't look like it, but again, there's some embedded videos, and this is the Revolver News slant on the whole thing with Thomas Crooks and the information that has been hidden from us all by the FBI. Your wonderful, benevolent U.S. government. And I came across this one. This is more, I think, tyranny happening in Texas. So again, if you have friends in Texas or live there yourself, need to be aware of this stuff. Texas sheriff arrests a vet for a political meme and then sets up a hotline to report more. Okay? Yes, this is actually happening. And this is not in the UK. This is in Texas. Texas is supposed to be the last place on earth where someone gets hauled off in handcuffs over a meme, right? Yet, here we are. A military veteran in Hood County was just arrested for posting a satirical meme online. The entire thing feels like a really scary anti-American deja vu after what happened to Douglas Mackey. The Biden regime slapped a felony on him for posting a hilarious anti-Hillary meme. Thankfully, a unanimous appeals court tossed out the conviction. The message was clear, though. Political humor is now a criminal offense if the wrong people get embarrassed. It says, and now it's happening again, only this time not in New York City, but in deep red Texas. I would say purple Texas, because the Democrats have moved in. And to make this whole thing even more ridiculous, Hood County has now launched something straight out of a bad dystopian comedy, a meme hotline, where residents can call the sheriff's office to report each other for posting jokes online. Yes, a hotline for memes. And then this girl, Cambry, is talking about basically what I'm reading about here. Serious, Texas, what the H are you doing? It's what's happening in Hood County isn't law enforcement. It's a left-wing style weaponization of political speech. And now it's being criminalized at the local level. And in fact, that it's happening, the fact that it's happening in a conservative state should terrify everyone, even more than the Mackey case did. So what exactly did Hood County decide was worth slapping the cuffs on a veteran for? Here's the part that has everyone stunned. This wasn't a threat, a hack, or some elaborate scam. According to local officials, the crime, the quote crime, was a satirical meme that parodied a political activist supporting a candidate she openly can't stand. That's it. And instead of rolling their eyes and moving on like normal adults, Hood County turned it into a felony case. And here is the Dallas Express clip from the article about that. And it says, nothing in that story sounds like a felony. It barely sounds like a parking violation. This was a joke, political satire, which is the oldest form of protected speech in America. And yet, the Hood County Sheriff Deeds is acting like he just nabbed Charles Manson too. And needless to say, the internet is already memeing this turd into oblivion. So that was the purpose of this. I'm a turd. I don't like memes. So yes, he is going to become, if he's not already, he's going to become very famous on X at least. There he is there. Sheriff Deeds, Deeds. If I was in Texas, you'd probably come arrest me just for talking about it. And it says, but here's where things get even more absurd. The man that they arrested isn't some anonymous troll or online troublemaker. He's a well-known local figure and someone who runs a community news page, operates a veterans mental health center honored by the state senate, and actually participates in local politics. This wasn't some random burner account posting chaos for fun. It was a respected veteran involved in civic life, which makes Hood County's response look even more like pure political retaliation. So anyway, further information here about all of that. The turd sheriff here. But, again, if you're in Texas, watch out, because they're working on your speech there. They're trying to get rid of it as fast as possible. So I just wanted to bring that one up. I thought that was certainly worth mentioning to you guys. Okay, came across this one. Kind of shifting gears a little bit here. Zelensky, his associate at the crux of the Ukrainian corruption case, has said to have fled to Israel. Legal proceedings expected to take place in absentia against entertainment tycoon Timur Mindich, who is accused of masterminding $100 million embezzlement plot at state companies. Before the revelation of a multi-million-dollar embezzlement and kickbacks scandal involving Ukraine's state nuclear energy company brought his name to the forefront, Timur Mindich was a shadowy presence, navigating deals and moving behind the scenes with unseen influence, known to many yet rarely spoken of. Mindich has reportedly fled to Israel amid a probe of his growing influence within the country's lucrative industries, and fears that his access was facilitated by his ties to President Zelensky. The webpage isn't cooperating here. The two were once business partners, and Mindich's influence had expanded since Zelensky was elected in 2019. So, fleeing to Israel, are you surprised? I'm certainly not. Anyway, yeah. Further information on this article, that is a timesofisrael.com article. Wow. Senator Fetterman is back home after hospitalization. You guys hear about this? See you back in D.C., he says. So Fetterman, at first, a lot of the Republican people were making fun of him because, to some degree, just because, he's a big oaf in a sweatshirt, and shorts, and didn't really seem like he was too with it, mostly because of the stroke that he had suffered years before or whatever. Well, he kind of got smarter as he went along and became more normal. And that was not something that the left is really too into. And in fact, what happened to him recently was pretty amazing. Senator Fetterman says he's returned home to his family in Pennsylvania after being hospitalized due to what his office said was a ventricular fibrillation flare-up that caused him to feel lightheaded and then fall during an early morning walk on Thursday. Fetterman, Democrat, Pennsylvania, posted a picture Saturday on X that showed the after effects to his nose and forehead, saying 20 stitches later in a full recovery, I'm back home with his wife, Giselle, and their children. So look at him. He did kind of have a very humorous other thing that he said here. I guess it wasn't in this tweet, but in one of the other tweets right after this, said that if you thought his face was bad before, you should see it now. Something to that effect. Pretty funny. The smiling Fetterman has also said that he was grateful to the medical team at Pittsburgh, put me back together, quote unquote. So what's crazy, though, is, and I don't know if this article goes into it, I guess it doesn't, was because he has been talking so much more like a conservative lately, which the Democrats, that's like their arch rival, arch nemesis, is any sort of conservative talk. You can't have that, right? Because he's been doing that lately and acting fairly sensible about things, a lot of the responses on his Twitter were that they wished that he had been killed and wished that he'd had a stroke, and just your typical, Charlie Kirk type of responses that you might expect, except they're burning their own guy here. So that was pretty crazy and not really surprising to me at all. So anyway, pretty wild. All right, this is one of the pages that wouldn't load a minute ago. So let's look at this one. This one is on a site called cyphernews.com. The red meat allergy claims its first victim. You thought we were joking when we mentioned this months ago. Nope. One tick bite just made red meat deadly. I know you're worried. The timing is not subtle. Nature and ideology are pointing to the same target. Briefing, says Grant here, a 47-year-old pilot from New Jersey just became the first confirmed death from a red meat allergy. Yep. It turns out a hamburger and a tiny little tick bite can prove fatal. Let's break it down. And yeah, there's no biolabs involved in this whatsoever. Not at all. Researchers at the University of Virginia School of Medicine confirmed the first known death from alpha-gal syndrome, the strange and increasingly common allergy to red meat that starts with a tick bite. So, sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Alpha-gal syndrome. The victim, who had no underlying conditions and no history of severe reactions, died after 2 severe reactions triggered hours after eating beef. For months, the cause of death was a complete mystery until UVA scientists tested his blood and pieced together what happened. So anyway, this is a blurb about his background. His wife told researchers that he had no gastrointestinal symptoms when she left their home around 7 p.m., according to the article. The man then became very ill and went to the bathroom about 7:20. Shortly after, the couple's son found his father unconscious on the floor in the bathroom with vomit all around him and called 911. The article states, resuscitation efforts from the couple's son and paramedics failed. The man was declared dead at the hospital by 10:22. Wow. So just 3 hours later. What's pretty alarming is that this syndrome has been rising for years across the eastern and southern United States. More than 110,000 suspected cases have been logged since 2010, and experts say the true number may actually be 4 times higher. Lone Star ticks are spreading fast thanks to exploding deer populations, and their bites can sensitize people to a molecule found in beef, pork, and lamb. Hours after eating red meat, victims can suffer hives, stomach pain, or full anaphylaxis. Alpha-gal is a sugar molecule found in most mammals, including cows, pigs, and sheep, but not in humans. So you can see how this tick-borne disease has been weaponized, yet again, by biolabs, by people like, if not, including Bill Gates. If not him, then certainly people with his mentality. Let's call it that. Most of the time, people can learn the pattern early and just simply avoid meat, but unfortunately, this case was different. The reaction hit so fast and was lethal, and sadly, neither this man nor his family made the connection in time. That's what makes this story so unsettling. An insect bite can flip a switch in your immune system and turn a meal into a deadly encounter. What also makes this story even harder to ignore is the timing. While researchers are confirming the first known death caused by a red meat allergy, the academic world has been flirting with the ideas of limiting human consumption of meat in a way that sounds like they had just ripped this idea from a dystopian novel, which, of course, that's the whole idea. They want us to eat bugs, right? Not red meat, not any kind of meat, well, except for bug protein. Fairly recently, the World Economic Forum linked bioethicists floated the idea of genetically engineering humans to become allergic to meat in order to force a global dietary shift. There you go. Here's a embedded tweet about this. WEF bioethicist wants to genetically modify humans so they become allergic to meat. And lo and behold, the actual genetically modified reaction is already out there and being spread. Yes, dine at your own risk. So there you go. Another good reason to enjoy that hamburger, I suppose. It might be your last one. Wow. Okay, this is another one that I wanted to show you guys that wouldn't load a minute ago, but now it is. This is a yet another murder on a college campus. And my point really in showing you this is that college campuses are becoming even more dangerous than they already were. So this is a kind of a strange one, and no one really seems to know why this guy was killed. College football coach John Beam from Last Chance U has died after being shot. There he is here. Apparently he was a really well-known coach. Oakland celebrated former football coach John Beam, who was featured in the Netflix series Last Chance U, that showcased his success with players that others would not gamble on, died on Friday after being shot on the college campus where he worked. Police arrested 27-year-old suspect on Friday. Authorities said that he knew the 66-year-old coach and was targeted. It was a targeted attack. So how about that? The shooting at Laney College rattled Oakland, with scores holding a vigil outside the hospital before he died. He was remembered as someone who would help anyone. Sorry about all the ads here. Mayor Barbara Lee described Beam as a giant in the city who mentored thousands of young people, including her own nephew, and gave Oakland's youth their best chance at success. For over 40 years, he has shaped leaders on and off the football field, and our community is shaken alongside his family. So then it talks about the suspect's brother, who was talking about the suspect, and they just can't believe that it was their relative that could possibly do this. But like it says, I hope it isn't him. The Cedric that I knew wasn't capable of murder, but the way things have been going, I honestly don't know. So they're talking about how he had changed his demeanor, I guess, over the last few months or years. So anyways, no one seems to really know exactly what this murder was about. I do think it's kind of odd, though, that it was another targeted type of killing, and another person who was pretty well known. Again, this guy had been featured in a Netflix series. So interesting to hear that happened, and makes me wonder, if this was a political hit of some sort, or if it was something more personal somehow. I don't know. Anyway, very odd. All right, let's move on here. We've got a couple of articles from DW.com. We mentioned this last week with the whole COP30 thing that was happening. And so this is a little bit more of a follow-up with that. This is something that people have been talking about a lot, and you may have heard about this. So I thought it was interesting just because of how DW.com, how they approached this, and basically calling it misinformation. Fact check: was rainforest cut down for a highway to COP30? So it's important here. They're trying to make this sound like that's not at all what happened, but it is interesting how the article is worded. It's a viral claim with millions of views. Brazil allegedly chopped down trees in the Amazon rainforest to build a highway to the COP30 climate conference. As DW can show, the claim is misleading. So they're saying it's misleading, and yet here's a picture of it right here. Now, watch how they twist the story here. World leaders and policymakers and environmentalists are currently gathering in Belém, Brazil, to discuss climate change. But every year, the World Climate Conference, or COP, also sparks criticism as thousands of attendees travel from around the world to be there. No kidding. They do so on private jets, pretty much all of them. At this year's event dubbed COP30, one criticism in particular went viral on social media. The claim says Amazon rainforest was felled to build a highway for the COP30. See, there it is right there. And then their fact check by DW, this website, again, mainstream media, quote, misleading. They're not saying it's wrong. They're just saying it's misleading. This claim has already been circulating for 8 months, but is currently regaining momentum while the conference is on. Some social media posts with this claim are getting more than 1 million views. According to most prominent figures sharing the claim, that U.S. President Donald Trump, who wrote on his own social media platform, Truth Social, quote, they ripped the H out of the rainforest in Brazil to build a 4-lane highway for environmentalists to travel, it's become a big scandal. They're calling what he said basically fake news. When That's not exactly what happened. Conservative commentators like Chris Kenny of Sky News Australia have used the highway to criticize alarmism and moral panic about climate change in the UN. But the reality behind these viral claims is more complex than the posts on social media make out. So again, misleading. They ripped the H out of the rainforest in Brazil to build a 4-lane highway for environmentalists to travel. It's become a big scandal. Now, here's where it's, I think, really funny. Yes, it is true. Parts of the rainforest were felled to build a 4-lane highway, approximately 13.2 kilometers long, close to Belém. The highway is called Avenida Liberdade, but according to local officials, this was not done just for COP30. Does anyone really think that? Plans for construction of a highway here date back to 2012, long before Belém was chosen to host this year's conference. However, other media have reported the highways linked to this year's conference. So they're saying here, yes, we did fell the trees. We did destroy all of the Amazon rainforest to build this highway. The only difference is we didn't do it specifically for the COP30 conference. It's just that they decided to have the conference there too. The plans were already underway. That is their fine line that they're drawing here, saying that, oh, it's not true. Well, clearly it is true. They're still using the road to get to COP30. Whether or not the road was built for COP30 doesn't really matter. That's what's being reported, and it is basically true, even though the road was being built ahead of time. I just thought it was pretty crazy that they're trying to say, oh, no, that's not why it was being built. Well, that's partially true, but you can say that the road was being used for the COP30 folks, so yes, it was being built for the same reason. Anyway, it's kind of a vicious circle here. Route of the new highway near Belém. Rainforest is protected but not untouched. Satellite images of the construction start compared to 1 month prior to COP30. So this was the construction as of June 2024 and then October 5th. So it sounds to me like they accelerated the plans to get the road done once they announced that they were going to have the climate conference here. But anyways, the mainstream media is trying to say, no, that's not at all what happened, when that is what happened. They admit in this article that, yes, it was basically torn down. Anyway, so this is another article on the same site, DW.com. Brazil's indigenous answer to climate crisis. Indigenous people around the world are vital to protecting forests, yet are often shut out of climate policy decisions. At COP30, they hope world leaders will finally respond to their concerns. Do you think they will? Are they multi-billionaires? If the answer is no, then they're not going to be paid attention to. Plain and simple. Anyway, but sure, it makes the rich folks seem like they're so caring. Yes. Anyway, so that was kind of strange. So further information on this DW.com article, and again, we'll link to these in the Substack post that I send out on Tuesday or maybe Wednesday this week. It just depends on when I can get to it. All right, information and liberation. Got a couple new articles here. Israel seeks 20-year military aid deal with U.S. as American support for Jewish state collapses. Israel is working to secure a 20-year military aid deal from the U.S. now that Americans support for the Jewish state has collapsed, according to a report from Axios. Yes, they want the 20-year military aid deal so that they will keep the money flowing in and never have to keep, coming back and begging for it. Hollywood producer buys Israeli NSO spyware maker, hires David Friedman to sell hacking tools to the U.S. Hollywood producer Robert Simmons has purchased the Israeli spyware maker NSO Group to bring it under American control and hired Trump's former ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, to lobby the president to remove sanctions on the firm so that they can sell their hacking tools to U.S. law enforcement. Isn't that lovely? They just keep it all in the family, don't they? So wonderful. All right, those are information liberation articles. Let's see, I didn't pull up anything specifically from RT this time, I don't think. Forbidden Knowledge TV. Another ICE article, ICE agents could be assassinated if sanctuary city insurrections allowed to continue. COVID lockdown model for digital ID deployment. That was the video from Greg Reese that we started the show with tonight. Let's see here. Another Thomas Crooks article here because of the video from Tucker. And this is something I'm hoping will gain some traction. Saving Tina Peters. Take action to save Tina Peters in coming national emergency. Tina Peters, 70, is a cancer survivor whose Navy SEAL son was killed in a parachuting accident in 2017. She's the former Mesa County clerk in Colorado. She's the one that's wrongfully been imprisoned here in Colorado. So we'll do a little bit more of an update on her in just a little bit. Turns out the jail she's in is being underheated. Let's just put it that way. Not good. All right, I came across this too. Elon declares the beast system terminator hellscape is the only way to eliminate poverty. And this is a short clip. Let me go ahead and share this, though, so you can hear the audio. But you can see that Elon Musk tweeted this. When was it? Earlier today. Optimus, about the robots, Optimus will eliminate poverty and provide universal high income for all. Yeah. Do you believe that? I don't think I believe that. All right, let me unshare and then reshare the correct tab so that you guys can hear it. Okay, so this is the tab, and let's play this. It's only a 40-second clip, but something worth reading and watching here. Elon, Optimus will ultimately be better than the best human surgeon. So here's what he says here, and that's what the text is that we're looking at.
You know, people often talk about eliminating poverty, giving everyone amazing medical care. Well, there's actually only one way to do that, and that's with the Optimus robot. With humanoid robots, you can actually give everyone amazing medical care. Optimus will ultimately be better than the best human surgeon, with a level of precision that is beyond human. So I think that's a pretty wild concept to say, okay, if you know, people always talked about eliminating poverty, but actually Optimus will actually eliminate poverty. Optimus will actually give people incredible medical care.
So there you go. There was the clip. And just looking at the text above it here, people often talk about eliminating poverty and giving everyone amazing medical care. Well, there's actually only one way to do that, and that's with the Optimus robot. With humanoid robots, you can actually give everyone amazing medical care. So first of all, do you believe any of this stuff? I don't. Optimus will ultimately be better than the best human surgeon with a level of precision that is beyond human. People always talked about eliminating poverty, but Optimus will actually eliminate poverty. And how is that? Making everyone rich, but if everyone has one, how can that be possible? It's not how things work. So, I don't know. I think that one is pretty strange, and but, you know, obviously he's the founder here of the Optimus robot, and of course he has a lot at stake. So, yeah. Elon does it again. So the headline with that is this one here on Daily Crow. Elon declares the beast system terminator hellscape as the only way to eliminate poverty. So I saw that and thought, man, that's not good. Not good. But yeah, he has the brain-computer interface and all kinds of stuff, doesn't he? So not good news, but I just thought it was worth mentioning just because I don't think Optimus, the robot, is going to help people get out of poverty. I mean, how can you afford one anyway? Very strange. All right, Wise Wolf Media on Substack. Just some of the top, most recent headlines here. I didn't have any specific ones pulled up, but we usually do look at their Substack each week because they have some really good ones. Tactical Jesus on resistance to evil by force. An essay on armed civil disobedience in an era of unprecedented evil. That's the top, most recent article. The real reasons you should prepare. 18 steps to emergency preparedness for Christians. So that would be interesting. Why Christianity Christianity gets attacked more than any other faith. And then, let's see. You are what you eat, black magic, shape-shifting, and fallen angels. So, very strange. There's some, a few other articles on here that's probably worth a look. We looked at one of these last week. I think it was this one. Silicon Valley is building a cybernetic whore of Babylon, and no one seems to care. We looked at that one last week, but you can see they put out new articles very often on here. Weiss Wolf Media on Substack. Daily Skeptic. Britain's police state unmasked. The shocking numbers clapped in handcuffs over offensive social media posts. Yes, well, they are starting to do that now in Texas, right? According to what we just read earlier. So this is just more about what we already know, what's happening in the UK. Submitted Freedom of Information requests to Britain's police forces, asking how many arrests they had made for, quote, offensive social media posts. The numbers are alarmingly high, over 30 a day in 2023 and only slightly less in 2024. Figures obtained by the Daily Mail show that some forces are making arrests for offensive social media posts at extremely concerning rates. It says Cumbria Constabulary had a nation's highest arrest rate of 42.5 per 100,000 population. So that's 217 arrests in 2024. 20 times higher than Staffordshire's police low rate, their low rate of 21 arrests. Wow. Gwent police came in second with a rate of about 204 arrests. The crime of sending grossly offensive messages or sharing content of an indecent, obscene, or menacing character on electronic communications networks is punishable by up to 2 years imprisonment or an unlimited fine. Unlimited fine. But thousands of people have been detained and questioned for sending messages that simply cause annoyance or inconvenience or anxiety to others. Yeah, like criticizing the Muslim influx, for instance. You can't do that. So anyway, that is a little bit of what's happening in the UK over there. And again, they're trying to bring it here. And who is it in charge in the UK? King Charles III. His Majesty, quote unquote. All right, that's a Daily Skeptic article. And then Slay News. This one I thought was something I wanted to bring attention to folks in Canada. Canadians forced into choosing euthanasia after being denied treatments. Something that we've talked about before on the show. Canada's spiraling euthanasia system is once again under fire as heartbreaking new accounts reveal that a surging number of patients are being forced into choosing the government's assisted suicide death program after being denied actual medical care under the nation's collapsing socialized healthcare model. An alarming number of Canadians are reporting that they have no other choice but to agree to be euthanized by the government despite the supposed availability of treatments for their condition. As Slay News reported previously, the government's MAID program, Medical Assistance in Dying, MAID, is now saving tens of millions of dollars a year, by killing people. In 2024, the government saved over $136 million by euthanizing patients instead of treating them. That also sounds like a Bill Gates program, doesn't it? Not to blame everything on him, but it's that same mentality. And then it talks about some of the most recent cases here of what's happened in Canada. So, more specifics. So, wow. Not good news, but again, they want to bring that to everywhere. And again, who is in control of Canada? Who's the head of the Commonwealth? That would be King Charles III, the soon-to-be Antichrist. So again, this stuff's all connected. All right, WNG.org from a section called The Sift. Butler, Pennsylvania Trump shooter acted alone, the FBI confirms. They don't confirm it, that's just what they're saying. That's a big difference. 20-year-old gunman who fired at Trump while he was speaking at Butler was a lone wolf actor with no outside help, FBI Director Kash Patel emphasized on Friday. Yeah, as soon as the whole story had broke with Tucker. So this guy is bad news, and I remember calling him out when he was first instated. He was first made the director of the FBI, saying that he clearly lied under oath. He lied specifically about pretending. He pretended that he had no idea who Stu Peters was when he'd been on his show at least 8 times. And he lied under oath. And because of that, it seemed to me like even though he got in, he took the position, he was let in as the FBI director. Because of that, they probably have a lot of dirt on the guy. And I think that's what's going on here. Perhaps the same with Dan Bongino. I don't know, but I would say Kash Patel for sure. They must have a lot of dirt on the guy to be able to force him to say and do anything that he's told to say and do by the deep state. So clearly a bad apple for sure. LeoHoman.com. Christian traditions being pinched between a hostile growing Islamic population and a hostile leftist secularism. If you want to see the future of America, just look at Germany. The situation in Germany this Christmas should be a wake-up call to every American city that has a growing Muslim population, along with Democrats in control of its governing apparatus. So anyway, that is a sort of a teaser, I guess, a little bit on LeoHoman.com. Probably on his Substack as well. I didn't check, but I have a couple other articles pulled up from his Substack, leohoman.substack.com. Apple launches new digital ID to help you breeze through 250 TSA checkpoints faster and more securely than ever before. Isn't that handy? Lovely and benevolent Apple. Digital enslavement is always about making things faster, safer, and more convenient, and more efficient. Technocrats love for us to sign up voluntarily for their domination of our lives. They do love that. Yep. Apple's rolled out its new digital ID, which allows users to make an ID in the Apple Wallet app on their iPhone or Apple Watch using information from their U.S. passport, along with a series of facial scans. With the launch of digital ID, that's a real unique name, huh? With the launch of digital ID, we're excited to expand the ways user can store and present their identity, all with the security and privacy built into iPhone and Apple Watch. Jennifer Bailey, Apple Pay and Apple Wallet Vice President, said. So yes, the security and privacy built into an iPhone and Apple Watch. So what she means there is only Apple and the U.S. government and China will have access to all of your information. So you should feel nice and safe. You think I'm kidding. I'm not. Anyway, further information here about the new digital ID brought to you by Apple. How long until it's mandatory? That's what I want to know. Anyway, it's being rolled out. Trump's designs on Venezuela epitomize everything that's wrong with what America has become under neocon domination. Short-sighted, arrogant, and desperate for a win, Trump seems ready to risk fracturing his base and exposing America to another failed nation-building adventure while ignoring problems here at home. Yeah, if the reports we're getting are true, the Trump administration is reportedly getting close to launching another costly U.S. regime change adventure in a foreign country. Costly for us, that is, but lucrative for the oligarchs. At a time when America has no shortage of deeply rooted problems that are in desperate need of attention, Trump continues to focus its eyes on gobbling up foreign resource wealth and settling old scores with foreign leaders that he doesn't like. A Reuters poll released this week shows that only 21% of Americans support the removal of Venezuelan dictator Maduro by the U.S. military. Just 29% support the attacks on alleged narco-terrorist speedboats in international waters. And again, I would go back to, that's what we're told that we're seeing. What are we actually seeing? Is that true or not? We don't know, and we have no way of verifying any of it. That's just what we're told. And the U.S. government is so honest. Anyway, it goes on here. This is Leo Hohmann Substack article, and then one more from his Substack this week. Trump says America doesn't have the talent to staff nations' factories. Laura Ingram's interview with the president draws out the real Trump, the man behind the facade of America First. Yeah, it did kind of leak out. Don't you know that they will be using that against him in the next campaigns, whenever that is, as soon as possible, I'm sure. During the interview with Fox News that aired on Tuesday, the Tuesday broadcast of the Ingram Angle, President Trump said bringing in large numbers of foreign workers under the H-1B visa program will harm the wages of American workers, but you also do have to bring talent. Host Laura Ingram pushed back. She said that if the H-1B visa would not be a big priority for Trump's administration, because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers. That's where it got interesting. Hats off to Ingram for asking a simple follow-up question, which is something you don't often see anymore amongst mainstream journalists. I would just stop there for a second and say, I noticed that a long time ago, really, but especially with the Biden administration, they would ask him a question or ask someone in the administration a question and never a follow-up question. So then, therefore, whatever they say stands, and then they just move on. Well, anyways, it is a lost art. They have abandoned the hard-nosed follow-up that often cuts to the core of the issue. Trump responded, I agree, but you also have to bring the talent. Ingram cut in with another follow-up to correct Trump, saying, well, we have plenty of talented people here, and Trump responded, no, you don't. Ingram cut in again, saying, we don't have talented people here? Fast forward to about the 4-minute mark here in the video to hear the president's astonishing comments, and he did say it. I heard him as well. And maybe you guys heard this video. I won't bother playing it because I have to cue it up differently and stuff, but take my word for it. No, it is there. It's embedded on this Leo Hohmann Substack article that we'll link to in the Substack post that I send out as well, but you can find it pretty easily. You just look it up on X if you want, or even YouTube. All right. Yes. So Trump says that we have, as a nation, do not have the talent. Okay. Whatever he says. And then natural news, just a few of the top articles here. China moves strategically to bail out Maduro and Venezuela, ignoring U.S. sanctions. So China getting involved down there. And then global complicity in Gaza genocide, 25 nations fuel Israel's war machine. Yep. And then Russia escalates drone and missile assault on Ukraine. That's something that Hal Turner reported on earlier in the week as well. China issues military warning to Japan over Taiwan intervention. So just a few of the top headlines on naturalnews.com. All right, and then the Wine Press got 3 articles pulled up from their Substack this week. Texas and California mandate digital ID to access all apps by 2026 as Apple introduces digital ID to travel inside the United States. With the launch of digital ID, we're excited to expand the ways users can store and present their identity, something I just mentioned, all with the security and privacy built into the iPhone and the Apple Watch. I know you feel protected, don't you? Yes, what a joke this is. Anyway, yeah, while the digital ID rollout overseas has grabbed attention online, the United States is quietly rolling out digital ID verification that is set to take place next year thanks to legislation passed by California and Texas. In October, Gavin Newsom signed a bill that forces device makers such as Apple, Microsoft, and Google to require users to verify their age to access certain online content. So there you go. That's where it starts. We got to protect the kids, like we said earlier. That is how tyranny starts, isn't it? Yep. And I think it helps to prove that we are definitely in the end times, because this is going the digital direction here very, very quickly. California's been gearing up for digital ID wallets since 2023. Gruesome promised at the time, know this, in just a matter of months, we're finally going to have those digital wallets where you can get your driver's license on a digital wallet, and we're going to do it like no other state has done it. There's only a few that have, but there's issues. Ours, we think, will be next level, so we're excited about what the DMV can look like. That is a Gavin Gruesome quote. Meanwhile, Texas passed a similar law, but is even more restrictive than California's. Starting January 1st next year, Texas will force users to provide legal identity to simply download an app. Any app, in fact, even if it's G-rated, from weather to sports to news or a simple calculator or a calendar. Everything will be affected. This is going bad really fast, isn't it? Looking to see if there's any other information that we didn't already mention. There's a few other details here. But yeah, people will be cheering for this because, hey, it's going to protect the kids, after all. Let's give up all of our rights. So there's some pretty good different little diagrams here showing how things are, like flowcharts showing how things might work. Japan also began allowing residents to store their IDs on Apple devices in 2024. As dangerous as this is, it's not the final iteration of what the ruling elite class wants. Eventually, everything will be merged together as one. Banking, medical, social media, and messaging, biometrics, and other important documentation. Nevertheless, this is not a good sign of things to come. Yeah. So it is getting bad really quickly. So Texas and California are leading the charge, and all the other states will follow at some point. Probably relatively soon, I would imagine. Anyway, that is on WinePress, on their Substack. Thought this was interesting. We just had Veterans Day a few days ago. It was, what was that, Tuesday? Last week? Well, a British World War II veteran breaks down on national television. The sacrifice was not worth the result. It is a downside worse than what it was when I fought for it. What we fought for and what we fought for was our freedom. We find that even now is downside worse than what I thought when we fought for it. Well, you get the gist. You get the idea. And I can't say I disagree. 100-year-old World War II veteran Alec Penstone, who was part of the D-Day invasion, was recently a guest on United Kingdom's Good Morning Britain to celebrate Remembrance Day, sometimes referred to as Poppy Day, to honor British veterans who sacrificed their lives in battle, but the hosts didn't get the response they were looking for. The gentleman, Mr. Penstone, was very humble after being introduced, saying, "Very nice to meet you and all. I cannot see anything that I've done specially that wouldn't have been done by other people of my generation. I'm just one of the lucky ones. I'm still alive." Very humble, very honorable. After recounting some of his war stories and stories of his father, who served in World War I, one of the hosts asked him, "What does Remembrance Sunday mean for you? What is your message?" He replied, "My message is, I can see in my mind's eye those rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today? No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now." This, of course, was not the reply she was expecting, and in a patronizing tone replied, "Oh, well, I'm sorry." The male host stepped in and asked Penstone to clarify. The World War II vet sadly replied, "What we fought for, and what we fought for was our freedom. We find that even now is downside worse than what it was when I fought for it." The reporters tried to patronize him some more, and then, as to race past his sobering remarks, the host of the D-Day Darlings for the British Armed Forces presented him with a CD with songs on it that he might like. So here's the video clip if you want to watch it. So I don't think they got exactly what they were hoping to get, saying how wonderful people are and how wonderful the world is these days. I think he's right, don't you? Yeah, anyway, and this one, the penny apparently is being stopped, being shut down. Cash tax. U.S. officially mints its final penny as stores will no longer accept pennies starting in 2026 in a move to digital currency. As we continue to improve efficiency across the government and deliver on President Trump's promises, this milestone will save American taxpayers upwards of $56 million per year, said Secretary Bessent. Yeah, well, it's costing us our freedom, though. I'd rather have the pennies, wouldn't you? After 230 years, the U.S. penny is no more. This week, the United States minted its final penny and will no longer hold any monetary value as it pertains to legal currency, but will now become a collectible. In February, the wine press reported that one of the first actions of the Trump administration, newly created Doge, that they decided to erase the penny. For many years, in administrations preceding, manufacturing a penny cost more than it was worth. Last year, it cost roughly 3.69 cents to produce 1 penny, leaving a deficit of over 2 cents. So I get it. From a business standpoint, it doesn't make much sense, of course. And I remember when he tweeted that out when he was just sitting in a box seat at a football game, which I thought was really odd. Pennies were first federally minted beginning in 1793 and were made entirely of copper, whereas now the coin is primarily zinc coated with 2.5% copper, according to the U.S. Mint. So bye-bye to the penny. U.S. has now officially stopped producing them. So I don't know what happened to the last one. There's the last one somewhere. Probably got framed and put up on a wall. Anyway, there's further information, and then it goes into the national debt. It says, though the penny's being phased out, pennies will still be regarded as legal tender for now. Treasury says pennies remain legal tender and will retain its value indefinitely. I don't believe that. Notwithstanding, however, this currency shift signals that many businesses will no longer accept them because of this. Many establishments may start rounding up or down to the nearest nickel. So get ready for that. They'll just start rounding up. Why stop there? I mean, round up to the nearest $100. How about that? Anyway, that is a wine press article. And we've got several from Gateway Pundit tonight. Let's see. I have somewhat made up my mind. That sounds like a Trumpism, doesn't it? I have somewhat made up my mind. Trump decides course on Venezuela, refuses to tell the press as Department of War launches Operation Southern Spear. So there it is. That's the name of it. Operation Southern Spear. With the massive U.S. military presence in the Caribbean, the question on everyone's mind is, now what? Trump has been meeting with Hegseth and the Joint Chiefs of Staff on the potential operations and options in the region. Gateway Pundit reported on how yesterday, the 14th, I guess, so it would have been Friday, Secretary Hegseth announced the new mission against South American narco-terrorists, Operation Southern Spear. So they've got a name for it. I'm guessing that they're going to do something. But again, he is the president of peace. So, it says, but what will this new operation entail specifically? Trump declines to tell the press. Well, of course, he's not going to tell the press. So we'll see where it goes. I just thought it was interesting that they've got a name for it. So they're obviously planning to do something. Operation Southern Spear. So I guess we're going to war. Perhaps. Or not. I don't know. It's clear as mud when you're dealing with Trump, right? U.S. releases footage of Russian intelligence vessel operating near Hawaii. Newly declassified information confirms that a Russian intelligence vessel was operating just off the coast of Honolulu on October 29th. Coast Guard identified the ship, the Karelia, a Vishna-class intelligence platform only 15 nautical miles south of Oahu. Coast Guard immediately deployed the HC-130 Hercules aircraft and a cutter to track the ship's movements, documenting a vessel explicitly built for intercepting communications, mapping infrastructure, and gathering signals intelligence near foreign coastlines. The footage and accompanying reports show a targeted response. Coast Guard personnel conducted controlled overflights, maintained visual contact, and monitored the vessel as it maneuvered near U.S. waters. Wow. So anyway, the Russians are checking up on the U.S. They just want to make sure we're safe. That's all. Yes, America is safe and effective. 20 stitches later, Fetterman posts bloody photo of his facial injuries after taking a bad fall. Yeah, so this is that is not him. This is what we mentioned earlier. So, yeah, there he is. Looking to see if there's anything new in this particular article. I guess not. Here, this is the funny tweet that he said. I thought this was good. It's self-deprecating. That's why I liked it. Senator Fetterman had this to say: "If you thought my face looked bad before, wait till you see it now." That's funny. That's comedy right there. Anyway, that is a Gateway Pundit article. And then this one, I had no idea Jesse Jackson was sick, but apparently he is. Developing Jesse Jackson on life support as friends and family fly to Chicago to be by his side. He doesn't look very well there, that's for sure. And I don't know how old that is. Reverend Jesse Jackson is on life support as his friends and family fly to Chicago to be with him. Last week it was reported that Jackson, 84, was admitted to Northwestern Memorial Hospital after he was diagnosed with a rare brain disorder. Wow. 2017, Jackson announced he had Parkinson's disease. Okay. Reverend Jackson was admitted to the hospital today, is currently under observation. He's been managing his neurodegenerative condition for more than a decade. Wow. So he has Parkinson's officially. He's rapidly declining, this says. He's been on medication for a few days to keep his blood pressure stable. He is steadily weakening. So it sounds like Reverend Jackson here is not long for this world, is my guess, according to what this article is talking about. So very interesting, huh? He was an interesting character. He still is, I suppose. All right, and then this one, Gateway Pundit, drag queen bingo at University of Utah. To my Utah friends out there, I'm sure you probably already know about this, but I just thought it was interesting because, you know, yet again, we see more degenerative behavior on campuses. In the latest university-promoted degenerative behavior, Campus Reform is reporting that the University of Utah's Union Programming Council recently hosted a campus drag queen bingo fundraiser. Isn't that lovely? The bingo event took place on November 6th and was posted on Instagram. Drag queens and students at the events. There you go. Looks a lot like bingo, I guess. And it's how I imagine bingo to be. My guess is there's probably no bingo involved. So anyway, that's what they're doing in Utah. Not really a surprise, is it? And then, let's see. Another United flight makes emergency landing in St. Louis due to a bomb threat. So this time the plane didn't crash. It was a bomb threat that made the plane make an emergency landing. United Airlines flight traveling from Dallas to Chicago was forced to do an emergency landing Sunday morning after a passenger allegedly claimed his wife's luggage contained a bomb. So he had to put it in the wife's luggage, not in his own. United Flight 380 landed at Lambert, St. Louis International Airport around 8:40 after a bomb threat was reported midair. That was this morning. Male passenger responsible for the claim was immediately taken into custody. I should hope. What about the wife? Sources say the man said that there was a bomb in his wife's luggage, triggering a full-scale emergency response. Airport director confirmed the passengers were evacuated and held in the concourse, while bomb and arson teams methodically swept the aircraft. Thankfully, no injuries were reported. So anyway, bomb threats in domestic flights. So, the fun never stops, does it? So yeah, another plane story. I have to have one of those every week. Fast food chain Wendy's is set to close hundreds of locations across the U.S. in 2026 due to a decline in sales. And that's usually what does it. And yes, it's the wonderful economy, right? Although President Trump has been making efforts to improve the U.S. economy, inflation and bad economics from the previous 4 years have taken a toll on numerous sectors of the economy. Steady rise in prices due to inflation has made it more difficult for the average American to afford fast food. In the past, it was a cheap source of food for families to pick up when they did not have time to prepare a meal. Now it has become more of a luxury item for consumers. As a result, fast food companies are experiencing a decline in sales, which is impacting their bottom line. Yes, of course, because people don't have the money to spend. Anyway, Wendy's announced earlier this week that the company plans to close hundreds of their U.S. locations in 2026 in an effort to maximize its resources. Yeah, so what it said was, fast food giant Wendy's plans to close hundreds of its U.S. stores next year as part of a broader effort to revive its domestic business, which has been under pressure from slowing sales. So the CEO said that a mid-single-digit percentage of its 6,011 restaurants are expected to close. So a mid-single-digit percentage is about 4 to 6% of the stores, which means at least 241 stores will close. So if you're a Wendy's fan and you like those Frosties, you better get them while you can, because they're going to be closing at least 240 stores across the nation. Who knows which ones yet. Anyway, that's a Gateway Pundit article. And then one more from there. D.C. Appeals Court strikes down Trump's DOT safety rules and allows immigrants to obtain commercial driver's licenses again, despite the fatal Florida truck crash. So this is a good illustrative type of article story that just proves how much the people who run the world, how much the people who run this country hate us. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, so based in Washington, blocked the Trump and Vance administration's emergency safety rule, a rule designed to keep America's highways safe from unvetted foreign drivers. They said, nope, you don't need that. You don't need protection from foreign invaders who become commercial drivers. We're going to let them continue to kill you. That's what they said. They might as well have. The court sided not with public safety, not with the families of crash victims, but with activist groups, blue city governments, and unions who argued that asylum seekers, refugees, and DACA recipients should continue holding CDLs, commercial driver's licenses, despite major questions about identity verification, training standards, and foreign driving histories. But that doesn't matter. It's okay when they do it, right? The stay halts Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's new rule limiting CDLs to individuals on verifiable, trackable visa categories H-2A, H-2B, and E-2. So different visas. The rule excluded categories where driving and identity records cannot be confirmed, including asylum seekers, refugees, and DACA recipients. Wow. The new DOT restrictions would allow immigrants who hold these specific classes of visas to obtain CDLs, valid CDLs, for 1 year and require immigration status to be confirmed via a federal database. So yeah, they just have to check in if they want to, they feel like it. Not a big deal. The Trump administration acted after a fatal Florida truck crash caused by an illegal immigrant driver, one of multiple deadly incidents prompting the FMCSA to reevaluate whose states were allowing behind the wheel of 40-ton vehicles. The FMCSA was, again, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So people that are tagged with protecting people on the road. Anyway, but even that wasn't enough for the federal judges in Washington, D.C., who decided temporarily to block the rule while lawsuits move forward. California, their DMV admitted to illegally issuing 17,000 commercial driver's licenses to non-domiciled foreign nationals, many of whom had no verifiable driving history whatsoever. Yep, they just said, come on in, and here's your driver's license, go to work. And that's what they've done. They are killing people left and right on the highway. So be careful out there, folks. It's not stopping. Because, again, they hate us. All right, so here's the Tina Peters update. I wanted to mention this because what's happening to her is truly criminal. She's innocent. Exclusive. Tina Peters is very sick. Her prison cell is kept at near freezing temperatures, and all for telling the truth. Tina Peters is very ill. Her prison cell is kept at nearly freezing temperatures. For those not familiar with the term color revolution, it's basically another way of saying government overthrow. Since the government is comprised of elected leaders in key positions of power, stolen elections are key to shaping the policies of the targeted government in a color revolution. This mechanism is like a cancer. If you corrupt the leadership, those under their command will likely follow. Most people don't have any idea how close we came to losing America until Trump's popularity was able to overcome the massive election fraud deployed against him in November 2024. Yes, but now look at him. Now look at us. Although the deep state was desperate to steal the presidency again, they found it necessary to enact Plan B. Instead, they stole as many House, Senate, and state elections as possible under the banner of plausibility, and of course, no charges were brought against this treason and probably never will. Thank you, Donald Trump and company. Not saying he doesn't want to, but it's not happening. Thank you, Pam Bondi and company. To have staged a Harris win over Trump would never have been believable, so this time around, it wasn't practical or possible for them to cover it up. In 2020, they were able to roll out the psyops of the plandemic, J6 prosecutions, deplatforming, and courts proclaiming no standing, etc., to protect their stolen gains, and many more things. Americans still knew it was all a charade, and the country was on edge. And it says, those who threatened their plan for destruction of America and their world domination are threats like Trump. Tina Peters and many others were threats. The reason Tina Peters, who was the former Mesa County, Colorado election clerk, is in the crosshairs, like President Trump, is that she discovered how the electronic voting machines enabled fraudulent election results, and she had proof. See, that was the problem. They don't really want you to be able to prove their criminality, so they put her behind bars. So I'm looking to see here what they're doing to her. So it's talking about some of the people involved. On July 16th this year, July 16th, the captain measured the temperature in her cell with a thermometer and recorded a reading of 53 degrees after the cell door had been opened to allow warm air for the hallway to enter the cell. According to Ms. Peters, the temperature at night with continuous cold airflow drops to an estimated 40 degrees. These conditions are in violation of both professional standards and constitutional protections. Yes, but she is a conservative and a Republican and someone who had all the goods, had all the receipts on what the bad guys want, so therefore she has to suffer. That's how that works, isn't it? Here's the attorney's letter with that was sent to the state with more information. So she is freezing to death in her cell as of July. I'm looking to see if any of that's changed. This article is dated November 15th. So I don't know why this is just now coming out. But obviously, Trump or someone should step in here before they kill her. Because obviously that seems to be the goal, doesn't it? It all begins and ends with Tina Peters. What they have done to Tina is reflective of what they will do to all Americans if we don't listen to her and end the corruption she exposed in our election system. Without honest and transparent elections in the 2026 midterms and 2028 presidential, America as we know it will be done. I think it will be done anyway, but for different reasons. Tina Peters exposed the color revolution's most crucial tool of stolen elections solely intended to destroy America from within. Ultimately, the best America could do to reward her was to send her to a likely death sentence of 9 years in prison. Yes, in a freezing cell in the middle of July. I mean, that is unbelievable. And then it's happening in this country, not in some third world country. It's happening in Colorado. So that is crazy. That is a Joe Hoft article, which is he is one of the guys that started the Gateway Pundit. JoeHoft.com. Pretty wild. And then here is a follow-up a little bit on this story. Revolver.news, Ed Martin with an update on Tina Peters. I do think Ed Martin is one of the good guys, from what I can tell. The state of Colorado has Tina Peters in its clutches, but the feds are beginning to tighten the screws. I'm looking to see if this mentions how cold her cell was. Doesn't seem to. So this is a video. It says, Ed Martin, we've been fighting for Tina Peters. We put Colorado's BOP on notice. We want her transferred to a federal facility. Todd Blanche is leading it. Well, that's trouble. That guy's been nothing but trouble. He's one of the reasons that Pam Bondi's kind of got him in charge of things, and he and her are the reason nothing is moving forward really at the DOJ. Todd Blanche is leading it, and we're putting the right kind of pressure on them. When the feds say they want something, states change their tune. So let's hope Ed is right here, although if Todd Blanche is involved, I don't think that's good news at all for Tina Peters. So anyway, that is a Revolver article, although it's mostly just a video embedded on here. It's time to free Tina. That is exactly right. Anyway, a couple InfoWars articles. Could a small Venezuelan island be the real reason behind the U.S. military's Caribbean buildup? The scale and posture of U.S. forces have prompted speculation that this build-out might not just be about dismantling command and control structures of narco-terrorist networks. So that's interesting. That's the first I've heard of this little island here. I thought it was always just about the drugs, supposedly. It says, but drug smuggling may not be the full story or even the real motivation. A far more concerning pattern is emerging. Here's how a small Venezuelan island called the Isla de Margarita, Iran-backed terrorist groups, and U.S. housing may all connect with sophisticated people transportation network into the United States. Oh, so human trafficking, it sounds like. Cited text from the 2013 House Foreign Affairs Committee on the subject of Hezbollah's strategic shift, a global terrorist threat. White House has been releasing videos of U.S. forces blowing up drug smuggling boats as if they're Super Bowl ads. They've quietly mobilized additional military assets to Puerto Rico. But drug smuggling may not be the full story or the real motivation. And then it says a far more concerning, and then ... Yeah, maybe this island is involved somehow. Hezbollah has also conducted terror training on Margarita Island for recruits from Venezuela and other Latin American countries. Hezbollah operatives and their co-conspirators hold senior positions in the Venezuelan government. They provide travel documents, weapons, and logistics support to terrorist operations and cocaine smugglers, as our witnesses will explain further. So that's interesting. There's, as there always is, possibly more to the story. U.S. military access cover. White House has ramped up releases of dramatic videos showing U.S. forces destroying drug smuggling boats. This follows U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites in June 2025 and includes quiet military buildups in Puerto Rico, suggesting a broader response to threats. Historical ties on Margarita Island. Since at least 2013, per a House hearing, Venezuela's Isla de Margarita has served as a Hezbollah training hub for local cartels, facilitating exchanges of tactics and resources. Iran and Venezuela's long-standing alliance amplifies this. So this could be a Iranian connection more so possibly than a Venezuelan issue. Just happens to be that Venezuela's right there. Which takes us back to, guess who? Israel. Because if Iran's involved, you can bet the U.S. will get involved. Because it's Israel again. Yet again. That's what it sounds like. Anyway, that's an InfoWars article. And then this one, Rep. Massey says, 3 billionaires with Epstein ties funding his primary opponent, claims 100 GOP House members could vote to release the Epstein files. So let's hope that does happen. It needs to come out. Making an appearance on ABC News Sunday, Massey said billionaires with ties to Jeffrey Epstein are bankrolling his primary opponent and claimed he has major support in Congress for a bill seeking to release all the Epstein files that are being withheld by the FBI. Well, let's hope that's true. And yes, Trump wants to make sure that Massey is pushed out as soon as possible. That would be because Massey has been a challenge to Trump because he doesn't take AIPAC money. He's one of the few.
Today we're sending a clear message that we will never give in to extortion, because that's what it was.
That is the open disdain of this corrupt elite that wants to rip you off. Trump's trying to reform it.
This is why we want Jack Smith in front of our committee in a deposition format after we get the documents, and we can ask him some of the same questions we ask his deputies that they took the fifth to. Like a simple question, was this a political operation you guys are running against President Trump? I exercised my Fifth Amendment liberties. How many other members of Congress did you spy on? I exercised my Fifth Amendment liberties. Those are the kind of questions we want to ask Jack Smith and see what kind of answers we get from the guy who ran this whole operation.
H.R. 5371, the Continuing Appropriations Act, passed by the House on November 12, 2025, in a 222 to 209 vote to end the 43-day government shutdown that began on October 1, 2025. The public will only really learn of an H.R. 5371 that guarantees back pay with interest for furloughed federal workers, bans federal layoffs through January 2026, and provides $29 billion in disaster relief, $5.7 billion for border security, a 2-year debt limit suspension through January 2027, and extensions for CHIP and community health centers. And then begins the gray area. Section 781, backed by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, long funded by the liquor industry, effectively banning hemp products like Delta 8 and THCA, threatening 95% of the $30 billion market. 300,000 American jobs, and $1.5 billion in state revenue. And as Americans suffered as leverage,
of course, there will be, families that are going to suffer. We take that responsibility very seriously, but it is one of the few leverage times we have.
The hog trough was filled. The bill also includes $10 billion for shipbuilding, $2.5 billion for missile defense. You see, $12.5 billion in defense pushed through pre-allocated funds to specific shipyards in powerful lawmakers' districts, bypassing competitive bidding and waiving Buy American rules for favored contractors, allowing a slew of foreign contractors to take those bids. Pork barrel politics benefiting politicians and donors, not the taxpayers. Most controversially, a rider in Section 957 appropriates for a special counsel fund, allowing GOP senators and representatives that were targeted in the Arctic frost investigation to sue the Department of Justice using taxpayer dollars. Essentially, retaliatory legal warfare funded by the public, while platforms like InfoWars are hung out to dry.
By shutting down the Alex Jones investigation Ed Martin was trying to look into, is covering up for Arctic frost criminality.
Let's go further. We have the documents. The DOJ illegally funded it. That's what Todd Blanche killed. Now this is a cherry on top of Todd Blanche protecting now Arctic frost.
We have ties between George Soros and the Sandy Hook funded lawsuits. We have ties between George Soros and all of the NGOs engaged in riot campaigns, including the so-called No Kings movement. So you aggregate this, but why isn't George Soros being looked at? Is it because Scott Bessent got rich through George Soros?
What you're seeing is the cover sheet or the opening for the case of Arctic frost. And the names that you'll see on there are Brian Turner, who's gone, and Jason Jones, who's gone, and Luis Quesada, who's gone, and Steve D'Antuono, who's gone, and Tim Tebow, who's gone, and Paula Bate, who was the deputy director, and he's gone. What you don't see are the names that are redacted, and those redacted people still work for the FBI.
They're literally saying, find any crime, get them. I can't believe they admitted this on record. Like, this is total weaponization admitted.
No, I look. They try to destroy the people whose voices are the loudest. This is why they came after InfoWars. That's why they've gone through all these bogus, defamation actions, which all you ever did was exercise your First Amendment right.
The retroactive potential to have dollars going to United States senators when we've got American citizens, whether it was J6ers, whether it was people from the FACE Act, whether it was others that have also had the full force of the federal government through the Department of Justice targeting and coming down on them. And they're going to see, oh, but you can slide in a provision in here for United States senators? Like, it is beside my comprehension that this got put in the bill. And it's why people have such a low opinion of this town.
John Bound reporting for InfoWars.
All right. That was a pretty good report. Another John Bound report on InfoWars. Let's see here. On this Thomas Massey one, I think we kind of covered that, so we'll move on. But yeah, he's definitely being targeted though for takedown in the next election. Trump does not want him in there, even though he's a fellow Republican. He's not taking the AIPAC money, so I think that's a big chunk of it. So anyway, further information on this article on InfoWars, and then not the B article I thought I would bring up just because I didn't really know who this guy was right at first, but and you probably don't either, but you will when I read through this a little bit. Minneapolis cop reunited with family 5 years after George Floyd's death. Read how God used him to share the gospel in jail. 5 years. So again, you probably don't recognize him. Remember how insane 2020 was? In the midst of all the George Floyd insanity, you may have forgotten that a Minneapolis officer named Tu Thao, I guess, T-O-U Thao, T-H-A-O, who just so happened to be standing nearby while Derek Chauvin was detaining George Floyd, was sent to prison for the crime of being in the area where Floyd overdosed and crashed out. He spent almost 5 years in jail. Former Minneapolis cop Tu Thao reunited with children after serving nearly 5 years in prison over George Floyd's death, which of course he overdosed. He wasn't killed by having Derek Chauvin's knee on his neck. He overdosed. That's in the autopsy report. Former Minneapolis police officer Tu Thao has been released from federal prison seen in recent photos reuniting with his children after years behind bars. Thao was sentenced to nearly 5 years in prison over the 2020 death of George Floyd. A fundraiser launched to help support his family as he rebuilds his life stated after Tu's release from his political imprisonment, many have asked for a way to donate and show their support. And here's the photos that were shared. So this is him with his little kids, who I'm sure, were even way littler at the time. Here's a link to his Give, Send, Go, if you guys want to look into that. On that fateful day in 2020, Thao was helping arrest Floyd after a local store had called police, claiming Floyd had tried to use a fake bill. Floyd, a career criminal, was found in the vehicle of his drug dealer and had multiple drugs in his system, including fentanyl. For several minutes, he actively resisted officers' restraint and professional attempts to put him in the back of the squad car, overpowering them at multiple points in the struggle. There he is here. This is the guy we're talking about. When police were able to get Floyd on the ground, Officer Derek Chauvin put his knee between Floyd's shoulder blades, not on his neck, as many believed. This technique is taught to U.S. law enforcement as a standard method of restraining suspects. As the crowd gathered, Thao tried to hold them back so officers could calm Floyd down and get him into the car. Unfortunately, as they were surrounded by an angry mob, the officers did not perceive that Floyd, who was high on drugs, was having a cardiovascular event. Thao was found guilty of aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter, and his sentence included both state and federal charges. Despite that, Thao's family said his faith in Jesus Christ was strengthened in prison, where he was able to be a witness for many. What the enemy meant for evil, God used it for good. Providence sent him to a hospital prison. This allowed him to share the good news of Jesus Christ with many terminally ill inmate patients. God healed many, and many entered into eternity to meet their Savior. On Give, Send, Go, donors poured out prayers and thanks for Thao. And then here's a few of the screenshots. People who gave donations and then saying, prayers and blessings to him. Thao did not have his children visit him in prison, not wanting to subject them to the trauma of such a visit. But for Derek being born white, we'd all still be patrolling the city of Minneapolis. No kidding. I've missed birthdays, Christmas. I don't even know how tall they are anymore. Difficult to miss parts of their childhood, never get it back. All because people want to get promotions, publicity, and make money. So, wow. So he was able to touch all of these lives while he was in prison. Isn't that amazing? So yes, I remembered seeing, once I saw this still shot, I remembered him from the video. Him holding back the crowds and so forth. You guys probably remember that as well. Anyway, I thought that was very interesting and a real blessing, and it's pretty neat that he was able to touch so many people's lives. So yes, what God intended, what evil intended for the negative, God intended for good, and that's exactly what happened here. So, what the enemy meant for evil, God used for good. Yeah, kind of butchered that, but there you go. Anyway, so this is the family pictures here of the little ones. So if they must have been newborns at the time, perhaps, I don't know. Anyway, that's a Not the Bee article. Vaccine impact. This is kind of a follow-up a little bit to a couple articles I mentioned from this same site last year. President Trump's tie to Kabbalah and the Noahide laws. Now, this photo here is actually from 2020. This is not a new one. So it's a little bit deceptive, although, yes, he's all for it. I don't know that there's been another similar picture in this current administration. I don't know. But it says, last week I published a couple of videos by a man who calls himself Been Born Again, who produced a documentary on Kabbalah, the religion of the serpent. We mentioned that last week. And there's a link to it here. I'm still working on my way through these videos on his YouTube channel. We'll probably have future articles on them, but this is one that not very long regarding President Trump's ties to Kabbalah and the Noahide laws that I think everyone should watch, especially if you're not familiar with this topic. This is mostly information I've already written about in the past, but with some great video clips and videography, including footage of Trump at Menachem Mendel Schneerson's gravesite in 2024. Grab videos like this when you can, because I sense they are tightening the screws on the internet. Kabbalah, Trump, and the 7 Noahide laws. So that is a different video than the ones that I mentioned last week. So those are available on this article. And I guess on this YouTube channel of Been Born Again. So something to check out if you are interested. I do think that is something that I'll watch. I did watch one of the 2 that I mentioned last week, but we'll come back and readdress some of these perhaps next week, because I do think it's interesting. All right, and then GeoWatch for this week. The big news, you guys might remember, I don't know, weeks ago or maybe a month or 2 ago, I don't even know when it was now, I said, one of my clients, I'm not naming names, is going to be on with Tucker Carlson, and lo and behold, finally this week, that video interview with Mr. Dane Wigington came out. Tucker Carlson covers geoengineering. Perhaps you already saw it. I don't know. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it, because it is really good, very well done. Clearly, Tucker had really no idea that this was going on, at least not in any broad sense across the board. Perhaps, local, I guess, climate modification, weather modification. He probably knew about that, but it didn't really go much beyond that from what I can tell. And then the article here says the government has finally admitted that chemtrails are real. It's called geoengineering, and it's far worse than anything you imagined. Dane Wigington explains on this Tucker Carlson interview. My deepest thanks to Tucker for his exceptional courage in addressing the most dire and immediate threats we collectively face, with climate engineering at the top of the list. So yes, very good interview, and it was released this last week. They recorded it back on October 1st. They originally were going to record it on September 10th. So this goes back a ways, and we know what happened on September 10th. When Charlie got murdered, it kind of set everything back, pushed the schedule back further. They rescheduled for October 1st, and it's taken them a month and some change to get this edited and produced. As far as the Tucker Carlson video production team. So I wasn't involved in it at all. I just knew that they were recording it, and I saw it when the rest of you guys saw it, if you've seen it yet. So yes, it's very good and highly recommended, and it's linked to here on GeoWatch, which you can get to by going to geowatch.com. We bought that URL, so that short version is available, geowatch.com. So you can go there and find it. It's one of the top, most recent articles over here on the right. And then global alert news for this week. Tucker Carlson has now added his voice to the all-important battle of exposing and halting the climate engineering assault. The discussion of climate engineering between myself and Tucker went live. Tens of millions of views on numerous posts have accumulated since and are still growing. A number of international media sources also covered the exchange just in time for the COP Climate Conference in Brazil, which we already mentioned a little while ago. Will the climate engineering issue finally be forced into the light of day, into the full light of day? Are we finally nearing a critical mass of awareness? Will U.S. mainstream media, paid geoengineering deniers, finally be forced to face the wrath of justifiably enraged populations? The awakening can't come soon enough. We are rapidly running out of time. The latest breaking bad news headlines are featured in the latest installment of Global Alert News. So there it is. It's called Waging Weather Warfare. So that was this weekend's broadcast, and we will have that published on the X accounts in the next day or two. So you can, if you watch everything on X, you can obviously catch it there later, but it is available on YouTube and BitChute and Rumble as well. And make sure you're following those channels if you're on either one of those platforms. Rumble, it's under Dane Wigington's name. On BitChute, I think it's under Geoengineering Watch. And, of course, on YouTube, it's under Dane's name as well. So, and then you can get to that, any of those, from geoengineeringwatch.org. And then let's see here. Let's look at the typical weather, temperature outlook coming up for the next few days, November 22nd through 26th. Looks like it's going to be very warm, at least in the eastern half of the U.S. So that cool down that we had that I described, I think it was last week, was very short-lived. And I showed you guys last week how the temperatures were going to rebound after the chemical cool down wore off. And indeed, that is exactly what happened. So this week coming up, actually November 22nd through the 26th, we have a rather large, I guess you could call it heat wave coming up for the eastern half of the U.S. And out west, it's going to stay, quote, near normal, whatever near normal means. I don't think there is such thing as normal anymore, but whatever you wanted to describe it as, I guess that's probably going to be accurate. 6 to 10 day outlook, and it's going to be above normal in the extreme southeast, but where I am, it's going to be above normal. So pretty warm. And then if we look at the climate reanalyzer, which we looked at last week, I just kind of refreshed this to get some interesting data here. The area where I am is going to be about 8 degrees warmer than normal coming up, starting basically from now through the next 3 or so days. And then 4 to 6 days from now, look at this. I'm right here in the darkest red area. It's going to be 16 degrees warmer than normal. 16. And then 7 to 10 days back down to 12 degrees above normal in this area, and even warmer in the upper Midwest area. Look at that. So it's red everywhere. So they're not doing any chemical ice nucleation, apparently, in the next, say, 10 days or so, because it's all warm. And that fully supports everything Mr. Dane talks about on geoengineeringwatch.org. Because we would not have those anomalies of having half of the United States blue and the other half, meaning cooler temperatures, and the other half red, meaning upper, warm temperatures. We would not have that without chemical cool downs. So this right here, they're apparently cooling out west at the moment because it's down near normal and below normal, maybe in like Vegas and Southern California and so forth. But and even into Seattle, but pretty much warm everywhere else. So pretty wild. So I would point that stuff out, and that is the scheduled weather coming up for the next few days. And then climateandeconomy.com, usually look at this site, just kind of look at some of the headlines. Again, these are things that the alternative media won't touch because, unlike myself and Mr. Dane, there's not too many other people out there saying that the alternative media and the mainstream media both have it wrong as far as what's happening with the climate. They both have it wrong. Alternative media, Trump, and so forth say there's nothing wrong with the climate and it's all a hoax. And you have the other side who is trying to take away all of our freedoms and pass all sorts of new regulations and laws, whatever they want to call them, around the World Economic Forum and carbon credits and so forth. And everything they're doing could be categorized as a hoax when, in fact, the truth is actually neither one of those things. Here's the truth. If you want to know what's going on with the climate, just look at some of these headlines. The Arctic on fire. The Arctic isn't just warming, it's on fire. So that is a highnorthnews.com article. record-shattering 2023 wildfire season in Canada to zombie fires smoldering beneath the boreal forests. Arctic wildfires are reshaping landscapes, threatening communities, and accelerating global climate change. Again, they're going to couch this in what's happening in the mainstream media. They're going to call it climate change, but it's climate changed with a D. It's being changed on purpose with geoengineering. So, we have more stories here about the Arctic. Massive hidden waves are rapidly melting Greenland's glaciers. Here's rain and floods and storms all over the place. We have crazy flooding going on. Storm Claudia in Portugal. Record-breaking wildfires in Spain and Portugal. Citrus groves in Argolida, one of the most important citrus growing belts in Greece, were hit by a short but extremely severe hailstorm in Greece. So again, chemically ice nucleated, very possible and very likely. And then let's see here. Violent dust storm in Morocco. Severe flooding in Ghana. Wow. Severe drought in Kenya. So it just goes on and on. So this is a little bit more of the truth as to what's happening in the rest of the world, and then where you draw your conclusions from. I personally think geoengineeringwatch.org is the best place to visit for that, because there's no politics involved. Dane doesn't play politics with any of it. He just reports the facts and states what's actually happening. And geoengineering is causing most of these problems. So anyway, that's probably enough on that. But you can see that there's always, every week, we talk about these multiple headlines up and down the page here. All right, I wanted to mention this just because we've talked about Charles often on this show, because he is going to be the biblical Antichrist. He's not quite to that point yet, but I thought this was interesting. This is just a clip from a recent video that was uploaded 3 days ago. In honor, quote unquote, in honor of his birthday, note, he is now 77 as of November 14th. So 2 days ago, Charles became 77. And note, he was born on 11/14/1948. 1948, he was born the year Israel became a nation. And he was born on the 14th, which is 2 sevens, and he's now 77. I like to look at those numbers, and I do think it's important. So here's the clip I wanted to play. I'll just sort of talk over this. Now watch. This has puppeteers here. And watch what they do with these animals. We have the gorilla. We have some of the other animals. And watch what the puppeteers do. Now keep in mind, he is a king, of course, and they're going to try and honor him as much as they can. But they're going to force the animals into honoring the king too by bowing to King Charles. All these animals. Of course, they're, plastic and paper mache or something, I don't know. But you can see the animals bowing to the soon-to-be biblical Antichrist. And of course, Charles loves it. He thinks everyone should bow to him. So, anyway, this is, I just thought that was interesting. This is a video of moments that made us love the king even more during the course of the last year or so. So this is just him celebrating. They're celebrating him, the fact that he's now 77. So anyway, we will link to that video in the Substack post, but you can find it on YouTube, obviously. Royal Family Channel is where it is. I just thought that was really interesting. And the fact that he's now 77 as of a couple days ago tells me That's God's stamp of approval in, not that he condones everything Charles is doing because the man is super evil, but the fact that at 77, I personally believe something big will happen in Charles's life. And remains to be seen exactly what, but we've talked about it on this show before. I think he will get, let's just say, some version of the Charlie Kirk treatment, except he will live through it. And I should have queued it up. There is a video clip out there of some people getting pretty irate with him as he's out meeting people in the crowds. Remember, we've talked about that on this show before. He likes to go out and meet the little people, the small people, the regular people. He likes to go out and shake hands with people. And one guy was really giving him a stern talking to, yelling over the din of the crowd, yelling about his brother, who of course has been stripped of all of his titles and so forth, Andrew, and his connection to Epstein. And it could be some, connection to the whole Epstein thing and the fact that people realize that Charles is just as bad or worse than anything Andrew ever did, and try and publicly hold him accountable. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm just saying I do think that there will be an attempt on Mr. Charles here at some point in the very near future, and the fact that he's now 77 kind of confirms it for me. So we will wait and see what happens with Charles over the course of the next year. I don't think we have much time because, again, he's aging and he meets all the criteria for the biblical Antichrist. It's something author Tim Cohen has talked about for a long time, and he's got his book available and multiple videos out there. This is a new one that's out, and we'll link to this in the Substack post that I send out as well, but you guys can find it. It's on his author Tim Cohen YouTube channel, The Antichrist and an Antichrist, King Charles III and Pope Leo, and talking about some of the important new updates here. And he goes into detail about what we've talked about as far as the heraldic achievement and how all the imagery here, just in this one picture, meets so much of the criteria in the book of Revelation for who the biblical Antichrist will be. That's why I stopped it on this frame here. And, Tim explains all this stuff. So if you are interested in this, we'll link to this on the Substack post that I send out. But it confirms what we talked about on the show with the heraldic achievement and the imagery that Charles has. And then again, this is the gematria in English and in Hebrew. We've mentioned this multiple times. I like to show it just because it helps to confirm Prince Charles of Wales or Charles, Prince of Wales, doesn't matter. Those words all add up to 666 in English and also in Hebrew, which again, I think the chances of that happening in both languages are astronomically high. I don't think there's any chance at all that they could happen in two different languages, but it does. And here's the key over here if you want to figure them all out, but it's all there, 666 in both languages, Hebrew and English. So very strange. Speaking of Hebrew, I thought this was kind of interesting. I didn't watch it, but I can't imagine why anyone would want to, but here's a video that they put out on Israel 365 News. Why should Christians be Zionists? Well, I have a two-word answer to that question. They shouldn't. They shouldn't. Why should Christians be Zionists? They shouldn't. Anyway, that's a video that's embedded here on Israel 365 News. There's usually one at the bottom of the page pretty much every week. And I was looking to see if there was anything else that was important. I don't really see anything. I looked at this earlier. New documentary, DNA analysis debunks myth claiming Hitler was Jewish. So who knows if that's true or not, but that's another one of the articles on Israel 365 News. Okay, and then let's see a couple of the tweets that I came across this week and retweeted. I wasn't on Twitter a whole lot this week, but I thought these were pretty interesting. The only thing VAXX's eradicated were healthy children. Did a good job of that, didn't it? And then there's this one. I thought this was very accurate. If you guys remember Seinfeld, Elaine Bennis has it figured out. See, who blocks MAGA and gatekeeps Trump? It's Susie. Pretty funny. So Elaine knows. Okay, and here is the Tucker and Dane interview. Tucker asks, what are these lines in the sky that we have all seen? Aluminum nanoparticles. We took a flying laboratory, quote unquote. No longer a conspiracy. We are all being sprayed like bugs. So this is just a tweet that I retweeted from, I guess, Died Suddenly. And anyway, he did a really good job, and Tucker seemed very open to everything he was saying, and hopefully there will be more. We'll see. Haven't really confirmed that, but let's hope. Anyway, that is the Diamond Report on X. So x.com/the Diamond Report. But I had to abbreviate report, so it's just RPRT. So if you happen to be on X, just look me up and give me a follow on there. I would certainly appreciate it. Here's the Substack, and you can use the QR code in the upper left corner up there and scan and go straight to this page, or you can just type it in. If you're not already a freebie member and signed up on Substack, please join. Again, totally free, diamonddisc.substack.com. That is how you can sign up and get the emails that I send out every week. I'm always amazed that people sign up and then unsign up. But there are a few of those people who decide they don't want emails. They don't want free information, I guess. I don't know. But most people are staying on the list. I've got, I don't know, probably upwards of 300 or so on the list. And of those, 7 or 8 are contributing financially to helping me cover my bases here on monthly expenditures on running the Diamond Report. So thank you to those subscribers on Substack. And that is an option if you guys want to help me out financially with what I'm doing. No pressure, but it is there. And then also Subscribestar is another way to do that. A few more subscribers on this option as well. Monthly support. So it is there. Again, no pressure, but there are no commercials in this broadcast. You may have noticed. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Just simply asking for your help. If you have it to help me with, I certainly would appreciate that very much. And it will go a long way towards helping me pay for my bills and, new updates like the software, like we're testing out tonight with the added screen layouts, so people can have an optimized version just for smartphones. And I'm not sure how well that worked. I'll get some feedback on that, hopefully, from you guys. So we have multiple screen layouts. We have, different ways of presenting the show. And, it all costs money, obviously. So would certainly appreciate that. And then if anyone wants to help me out just in a freebie kind of way, you can join any of the platforms that I'm on and subscribe there. Totally free. We have Diamond Disc, which is also kind of notated here, the Diamond Report on YouTube, which is the newly resurrected YouTube channel from years ago. And then we have the backup channel, which is the channel that I've mainly been using the last few years. Take It to the Lord in Prayer, End Time States. So we're up to 970 subscribers there, and we are down to 26,700 subscribers on the other channel. They've stripped away about 1,000 subscribers now on this newly revived Diamond Disc channel. So they've removed about 1,000. So they're taking them away in large chunks, but in small chunks at a time, if that makes sense. So not too surprising, that is what YouTube does. And then BitChute, you can find me at the Diamond Report on there as well. Diamond Disc on BitChute and Rumble and Brighteon. So that's the various video platforms. And then the band group, we are growing very slowly. We're over 100 we're right at 110 members at this point. Totally free. And if you want to join a group of folks who love Jesus and want to get together and talk about things, just posting things, kind of like Facebook, but it's not it's not like monitored in that way. Like you're not going to get censored by posting things. Now, if you're posting things outside of what this group's really about, then you might. But I'm just saying, in general, we're very obviously Jesus friendly and want to share information about what's going on in the end times, and that is mostly what this group is posting things about. But you can post things like prayer requests or whatever. If you have personal things like that you want to bring up to a group of people who will certainly pray for you, this is a really good place to do that. The Diamond Report on Band, BAND.us. And anyway, that is the end of the different articles and things I had for you guys tonight. So I wanted to take a look, though, and see what all you guys are saying. Now, I will mention this again. The various layouts we have on the broadcast tonight, we're doing as a test. I may not continue with that. It kind of depends on what you guys' response is to that, because obviously I'm the one doing the broadcast here. I can't really also be listening and watching at the same time I'm doing the broadcast, clearly. So what I was going to say was, though, that for the folks who are in chat on a smartphone layout, if that makes sense, your chat I can see here on my screen, but it doesn't show up on the main broadcast screen there over on the right. That is going to be the the desktop normal layout version of the show from both YouTube channels combined. It doesn't show the chatting from the smartphone layout, if that makes sense. So again, we're doing a desktop layout and a smartphone layout, and you can choose either one when you start watching the show. If you're watching on a phone, you should choose the smartphone layout. It should be optimized and look a little bit better than the desktop version would on a phone. I don't know. You guys can let me know that. But anyway, if you're chatting away on the smartphone layout, it will show up for me here, and see, I can put your comments on here, like this one from Marty. He says he's present. He actually submitted that through the smartphone layout on one of the two YouTube channels. So several people did that, and if you're wondering why it didn't show up on the main screen, this is why. The IRS and Social Security is already demanding facial recognition or real ID now in order to access your account. Okay. Well, Marty would know. Well, I won't go into it, but he would definitely know. So that is really interesting, Marty. Thanks for letting me know that. I didn't realize that. So wow. But it's going digital very, very fast, isn't it? So any of the comments that people leave here, I can see them and post them on the screen like I just did with Marty's there. But they may not all show up over on that strip over on the right side of the screen. So I think that is a bug, though, in this platform software that they will have to work through. That is not something that I can change. So I'm looking to see if anyone else had any other comments. Susan says, Bongino seems like COINTELPRO to me. You know, I think you're right. I think he's possibly very overwhelmed. And, you know, he had a good thing going with his podcast and was reaching a lot of people. But yeah, I mean, could be COINTELPRO. I don't think the guy's evil, personally. Like, I don't think he's necessarily working for the deep state, but it could be that he's like Cash. Maybe both of them have something in their histories that is being brought up and saying, if you don't play along, then we're going to expose this. I don't know. I'm not saying that's what's going on, but it sure seems that way with Patel. That's for sure. Dan Bongino, I have no idea. He was already former FBI or whatever anyways, or maybe he was just a more of a police officer type guy. I don't really know. I never really followed him. So it is interesting for sure. Matt says, wouldn't it be great if Trump isn't an Epsteiner, as all the lefties who turn a blind eye to this now think they have Trump in checkmate? Yeah, I think that's a good point, Matt. And I don't know. I know a lot of people have looked into it, and keep in mind the Democrats had access to the Epstein files for decades. It seems like for years anyway, certainly for years, through the entire Biden administration and part of Obama's administration. They had access to that stuff, so that if they were in control of it, you'd have thought that they would have already put that information out in order to keep Trump from being elected in the first place, which of course they failed miserably at least 2 different times, really 3 different times you could argue, but 2 different times for sure. They were successful in 2020, so I guess that's a plus for them. But the Sky Sprayers have ditched the zinc since the Jabberoos. I take it every day to protect me from shedders. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, the shedding from the VAXXs is proven to be happening, so it's good to be able to try and protect yourself, although I don't know how effective that is. But yeah, I mean, definitely trying to do something is better than doing nothing, for sure. Meat allergies are real. Yep. Bill Gates needs to release billions of GM ticks to save the day. Yeah, that's a good point. The ticks are going to save us from the deadly alpha-gal syndrome. That's crazy. Freezing here in Australia, and it's near summer, Matt says. Okay. Yeah, that's probably chemical ice nucleation. You guys have stripes going on across your skies too, I'm sure. Looking to see what else we have here. William says we need to remember Ephesians 6. He's a fly on the wall compared to the real fight. Yeah, I'm not sure who... Oh, that was probably in relation to Bill Gates. We were talking about Gates earlier. Yep, just one of KC3's The Antichrist Decoy Knights. Again, talking about Gates. Based on what I'm seeing here in this chat. Amen. People are slowly catching on to who KC3 is. Yeah, I think we're ahead of the curve on that one. And mark my words, something is going to happen to him. I mean, I don't have anything to do with that. I'm just saying, it seems obvious to me at this point, the fact that he's reached 77, something's going to happen. I don't know what, but I don't know what, and I don't want to know what. I'm just saying that whatever it is, it'll be very interesting for sure, especially when he comes back from it. And then we will all know, won't we? Matt says the bitten Apple logo says it all. Never bought an Apple product in my life. That's a good point. I haven't either, actually. It's hard to stay out of it, but, Microsoft is just as bad in different ways, I guess. What else we have here? Certainly need more guardrails on the subject of safety. Yep. Do you have any airline news tonight? Yeah, that was the one thing that I mentioned with the bomb scare. That might have been after. I might have mentioned that after your post here. I don't know. That was the only airplane thing that I came across. Usually, I'm not really looking for those. I just sort of end up finding them. Yeah, the bomb threat. Let me think here. Lots of chatting back and forth, mostly with just a few people. So, I guess our good friend, several of our good friends, but Miss Emily apparently didn't make it tonight. Matt says, amen, Doug, between now and March next year, we shall know a lot more about KC3. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know why March, but yeah, I think it's coming soon, for sure. So we will have to keep a sharp eye on that, but obviously, anything big that happens with him, it will be instant news across the entire world. So anyway, it's kind of like pretty easy to call at this point, although, we never know the details, and God never works the way that we think it's going to work. So whatever we think is probably wrong. However, I think it's been confirmed he is going to be that person. It's just a matter of the details. So anyways, thank you guys for being here tonight. I certainly appreciate it. I guess we can wrap it up. We are 2 hours and almost 50 minutes in. We've got one more video we could watch tonight. Call it a night, I suppose. But I got through all the articles and everything, and we can part ways here with, let's see, we've got 2 videos here left that I've formatted for tonight, ready to play them. Evict the New World Order Jihad from the U.S. I think we'll watch that one. So we'll stop with that, and then here's another one, I guess. New World Order puts Canada up for the plundering. I'll just pick one. So you guys have a really good week this week coming up, and we'll see what happens. We'll see the end times unfold even further this week. And let's see, the next broadcast will be 9 p.m. Central on the 23rd. So we will do it then, and double check Rumble here and make sure I didn't miss anything. Got several people watching on Rumble, so welcome, Rumblers. And not much going on in chat there. They're real quiet over there on Rumble. I don't know why. Anyway, we'll do it again next week, you guys, and let me know on the whole smartphone versus desktop layout thing, if that was too confusing for people, or if I didn't really see anybody talking about that. So let me know if you guys want me to continue that. I think it's putting more stress on my computer, honestly, but maybe it's worth it if you guys like it. I've known the numbers. I've noticed that the numbers are sort of shifting up and down as far as the people who were watching tonight. So I think that had a lot to do with it. Some people clicking on one and perhaps going to the other. I don't know. But let me know if you guys like the double layout version. We have the landscape / desktop version, which is the normal version, and then we have the other version, which would be more like optimized for smartphones. So let me know if you guys want to keep that. I can really only do that on YouTube though. So for Rumble, you guys are stuck with the desktop version, but that's the one that I prefer personally anyway. But yeah, just let me know on that, you guys, and we'll figure it out again for next week, and we will do it again then. Hope you guys have a blessed week. Keep Jesus close to you and keep your family close to you, because this crazy end time scenario does seem to be unfolding right before our very eyes. We were meant to be here at this time, and we are supposed to be here affecting all the people in our immediate circles, hopefully for the good. So keep Jesus in your life, keep him close to you, and you will be blessed, and your family will be blessed as well. Love you guys. Stay safe, and we'll see you again next week.
Hey, no. Canada's officially the dumbest fucking country on the planet, and so are most of the Canadians that voted for this. I'm not even kidding. You guys are so dumb that you don't even realize the police chief is trying to tell you right now to lose all ability for your survival skills. That's the PSYOPs. So if you don't know what's going on, we had a guy break into a home in Welland, Ontario, and rape a 5-year-old child. He essayed a 5-year-old child while the parents were sleeping. And you want to know what's happened to him? Nothing. He's out on bail.
You just will not believe the depths of the stupidity coming out of Canada, Hamilton, Ontario more specifically, in a country where crime is running rampant. Criminals are running around with real guns and real bullets while the citizens are being disarmed. Homes are being broken into left, right, and center. Now the city of Hamilton is saying you can't have security cameras on your own property.
There are 10 security cameras mounted outside of Dan Miles's Hamilton home. He says they've been a valuable tool for crime fighting.
I've actually participated in evidence sharing of 3 homicides on these cameras, over 40 break-and-enters, multiple home invasions.
So it came as a surprise when the city of Hamilton asked Miles to remove all of his cameras.
There's also updated advice for all vehicle owners, a message echoed by Toronto police speaking at an Etobicoke safety meeting last month. Constable Marco Ricciardi had a new message for vehicle owners who keep their fobs in Faraday pouches.
To prevent the possibility of being attacked in your home, leave your fobs at your front door, because they're breaking into your home to steal your car. They don't want anything else. A lot of them that they're arresting have guns on them, and they're not toy guns, they're real guns. They're loaded.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Roskamp, is Canada currently releasing repeat offenders out on bail that are a threat to public safety?
I believe in some situations they are.
In Vancouver, just a couple years ago, there was a report that 40 individuals, prolific offenders, were responsible for over 6,300 incidents with police in just a small period of time. In your estimation, what % of crime that's being committed in your community is being committed by a small number of criminals, repeat offenders, or individuals already well known to police?
I would say it is above 80%.
And while Eric over here is opposed to having people on house arrest, we do have to acknowledge the fact that our prison system is incredibly costly. Housing somebody within the prison system is a huge burden on taxpayers versus having them on house arrest, for instance.
And now, fast forwarding to 2025, and the government's coughing up billions in settlements, papering over the festering wounds of dispossession in order to slice Canada up into fragmented provinces under a new world order.
Private ownership is in jeopardy.
A precedent that will flow from this case is that sections 23 and 25 of the Land Title Act do not apply to Aboriginal title. Those are not my words. Those are the judge's words, paragraph 3551.
Another possible outcome of all of this land grab activity going on in Canada right now is that if this continues, what's going to happen is Canada is going to break apart in a very short period of time. We're talking a few short years, maybe. And Saskatchewan and Alberta are going to separate, and that will immediately be horrific for our already brutalized economy. And then the rest of Canada is basically up for sale, up for grabs for the lowest bidder. And we'll either be scooped up by China or the United States. I would personally prefer the United States.
It's a floodgate for chaos, leaving now native Canadians wondering if their deed is just a fancy IOU to the ghosts of 1874, as they undergo a private land raping by the New World Order communism, disguised as Prime Minister Carney's liberal Canadian politeness.
We should be taking into account the impact of our flying on the planet now, and that's
pushing up the tax on flying.
You push up the tax on flying, you push up the cost on transport, and that's in part what putting a price on carbon is.
John Bound reporting for InfoWars.
I can no longer sit back and allow communist infiltration, communist indoctrination, communist subversion.
I wanted to speak about Islam because it's very easy for us to do the classic, and I think that's what they want us to do, divide and conquer. And the problem is that people are confused. They think this is about religion. This is about authoritarian versus a libertarian existence. That top horizontal bar is the lie that we've been told, that there is far left, far right, and in the middle is, democracy. When in fact what it is it's socialism in the middle. So they've lied to us and they've made us think that there's this thing called far left, which is supposed to be very different from far right. It's a lie. What is true is that the real, spectrum is from total government to anarchy. And constitutional republic is just slightly below anarchy. It's where we have liberty and freedoms, and we live in Christian countries under the idea that we are given inalienable rights.
Loads of people call me racist for going to these, but I just want to be able to feel safe in my own community, and I just want to be able to walk the streets like my dad and my mum used to without a worry.
Dr. Mukadam, what is the penalty for apostasy? If it's an Islamic country, then the Sharia is very clear. Apostasy is dealt with the death penalty. Thank you, that's all I want to hear.
He plays his games, we play ours.
They create this fake paradox of political systems. Is something totalitarian or is it libertarian?
If we start going, Islam, is evil, and they're all, barbaric and cruel, and they're awful to women, and blah, blah, blah. We're just going to get into the divide and conquer. What I think we can differentiate that any religion...
Islam is totalitarian.
Yeah, any religion that's totalitarian, we don't want.
There's no big organized Christian movement that's going to put beekeeper suits on women and enslave them and do all this. Exactly. So we have to recognize, where is the real totalitarianism in religion right now? It's Islam.
Have you ever had a single moment's thought about my responsibilities? Have you ever thought for a single solitary moment about my responsibilities to my employers?
This is a concerted effort by a group of human beings who are authoritarian, who wish to conquer the entire planet. What we're talking about here is a lower frequency of existence. And we can all imagine, when the Aztecs would be sacrificing people and the Druids were sacrificing little children. These are low states of consciousness. I mean, murdering people in order to placate some vicious god.
Allah promotes violence against the Jews, against the Christians, against the kafir, the unbeliever, openly. Allah himself is telling the Muslim people to go and kill them with violence. And it's like you're doing favor to God. Like you're doing, a supernatural, amazing thing by killing your enemies. And the exact opposite is in the Bible, where Jesus comes, Isa comes and says, forgive your enemies, love them, bless them, take care of your enemies. So it's such a huge contrast.
The West goes to empower women, and then somehow the globalists get women to double back to go to the most Stone Age thing there is.
According to the Sharia again, when it comes to women, there must be a hole dug in the earth, in the ground, and she must be covered up to the half of the body.
So know this, that Islam will enter every house. Every house.
If we fail to acknowledge that what we're witnessing with our eyes, what we're hearing when they say, Muslim, we're going to take over America, everybody will be a Muslim, we'll be in every home. The reason why I keep banging on about this is because I want to save us from falling into the trap of divide and conquer. I know that there has to be Muslims out there that understand what I'm saying, that move to America precisely because of the libertarian construction of the American society. Everything that Christ said to us, it's all about love. And love ultimately is the act of wisdom to know that if somebody is behaving terribly, you can't counteract it by being equally terrible.